Chapter 377. Preaching the Great Way and opening the sky again. After the god of Buzhou Mountain understood the function of the jade token, he changed his mind slightly. Then, the countless pandas shook, and the soul essences in them were exchanged with the soul essences in the jade token through some unfathomable and mysterious method. Then, the pandas turned into more than 1,000 kinds of strange star beasts, which were distributed on the mountain within a radius of hundreds of miles. The whole process was extremely fast. It seemed that the pandas shook slightly, and without any pause, they had already turned into more than 1,000 kinds of strange star beasts. Behind the heads of these star beasts, there were different numbers of halos with different powers, which represented different kinds of magic. After experimenting with the soul essences of the star beasts that could be summoned from the jade token, the god of Buzhou Mountain stopped experimenting. Then he focused his mind and touched the strange light that had covered the whole Buzhou Mountain, making it spread outwards with great effort, continuously expanding the scope of his control over the surrounding area. However, the god of Buzhou Mountain was only the god of Buzhou Mountain after all. He was born with the authority to control Buzhou Mountain, and it was much easier for him to deepen this control with the help of the jade token than for ordinary innate gods. However, if he wanted to expand this deep control beyond Buzhou Mountain, it would be more difficult than for ordinary innate gods. Therefore, at this time, when the god of Buzhou Mountain tried his best to expand his control over Buzhou Mountain, the speed was tens of thousands of times slower than when he had deeply controlled the mountain. It was almost like he was crawling at a snail's pace. If it was not for the innate gods with sharp senses, even if they could see the change in this control range, they would not be able to notice that it was expanding. At this time, Luo Fan was standing above the liquefied, chaotic, vital energy sea at the top of Buzhou Mountain. All the movements of the god of Buzhou Mountain, including the expansion of the control range, were naturally included in his senses. Seeing this, he was not surprised at all. Instead, he nodded slightly, feeling quite satisfied. Although the speed is very slow, it is still growing. After a few thousand years, it should be able to grow to a sufficient range. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With the help of the Nether Network, he continuously brought the current state of the innate gods in various regions of the untainted land into his senses, and then reconstructed them in his mind. Although only a short period of time had passed, the places where those innate gods guarded were, after all, far from Buzhou Mountain. At this time, many innate gods guarding the areas near Buzhou Mountain had already arrived at their areas. As soon as these innate gods arrived, they landed in the center of the area. When Luo Fan divided the untainted land into these 129,600 areas, he did not divide these areas according to a regular geometric pattern, but according to some rather complicated and abstruse rules. The outline of each area looked very irregular, but in fact, it contained some patterns of the Great Way. As a result, the center of the 129,600 regions was the most mysterious point in each region. It was the place where one could easily control the entire region. Some of these innate gods were strong and some were weak, but because of Luo Fan's arrangement, they were all in the most suitable areas for them to guard. As soon as they landed in the center, these innate gods felt that they were faintly resonating with this area, as if they could sense the breathing of the entire area. Even many innate gods instantly felt that this area contained some wonderful principles that could help them break through their current realm, and they even had an idea that they could control the entire area with the help of the jade token after a little sacrificial refining. Stimulated by all kinds of wonderful situations, these innate gods, while admiring Luo Fan, also focused all their attention on the areas that they were guarding. While Luo Fan was paying attention to these innate gods could barely feel that they seemed to have a very obscure and subtle connection with the distant Buzhou Mountain, although they could not completely perceive Luo Fan's perception. With a little deduction, they knew that Luo Fan was observing them. These innate gods would not speculate about Luo Fan with the greatest evil intention, but they understood that Luo Fan was just trying to understand the situation and did not want to peep at them. So they did not care about this connection, but tried their best to expand the area they could sense and control with the help of the Jade token. As time went by, more and more innate gods arrived at the area they were guarding. The entire untainted land was like a jigsaw puzzle. In Luo Fan's mind, the pieces lit up one after another, and they were becoming more and more complete at a steady speed. As expected, in this way, I can also use the power of these fellow Taoists to gain a deeper control of the untainted land, and in the future, I can also deploy the army more easily to destroy the heavenly demons. Such thoughts flashed in Luo Fan's mind, and a satisfied expression appeared on his face. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, a month had passed. On this day, it was the day that Luo Fan had promised to preach to his disciples. Early in the morning, Hong Jun, Luo Fu, Guang Pu, Lei Jiuxiao, Luo Chunyang, Shuan, Tianyi, and Liu Xiao had already arrived in front of Luo Fan's search cave, waiting for Luo Fan's arrival. In this month, Luo Fan had been staying above the liquefied chaotic vitality sea at the top of Buzhou Mountain. He did not do anything, but just waited quietly. Occasionally, he would sense the location of the innate gods that were scattered throughout the untainted land and achieve nothing more. When the sun rose, Luo Fan's body moved slightly. The void around his body shook slightly, and there seemed to be traces of the sound of the great Tao, but it was very vague, obscure, and inaudible. After a moment, it completely disappeared without a trace. This was the reason why Luo Fan's mind moved, causing endless changes in the void. After a slight calculation, he knew that the time was up. Without hesitation, he lifted his foot and took a light step forward. In the blink of an eye, he arrived above the search cave and appeared in front of Hong Jun and the others. As they were all disciples of Luo Fan, they were naturally ranked according to who entered the sect first. Therefore, Hong Jun was standing at the front, Luo Fu was standing on Hong Jun's left, and he was slightly behind Hong Jun. Guang Pu was behind Hong Jun on the right, and behind her were Lei Jiuxiao, Luo Chunyang, Shuan, Tianyi, and Liu Xiao. When everyone saw Luo Fan suddenly appear, they were not surprised, but they did not dare to be negligent. They hurriedly bowed and said, "Master, teacher, may you all be well." Luo Fan raised his hand and waved gently, producing a gentle force to help them up. He said, "There's no need to be so polite. Follow me." Everyone bowed and agreed. They followed Luo Fan into the search cave, and before long, they arrived at the depths of the cave. With Luo Fan's current cultivation realm, any changes in his heart would cause the surrounding void to change accordingly. At that moment, there were all sorts of Tao techniques and the laws of the world in Luo Fan's mind. They were evolving and brewing, and the space around him naturally changed. All sorts of unbelievable and indescribable phenomena appeared out of nowhere. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils, and the sound of the great Tao kept resounding. There were even heavenly flowers that appeared out of nowhere and disappeared. There were even golden lotuses that appeared when he lifted his feet, supporting his feet that were about to step on the ground, preventing them from touching the ground. The chaotic vitality that filled the search cave constantly condensed and changed during this process. It turned into everything in the world, the stars, the universe, the mountains, and the rivers, as if it was evolving into an extremely vast and spectacular world. During this entire process, every single move Luo Fan made contained the supreme truths of the universe. It seemed as if every single minute movement, every single change in the smallest breath was capable of being decomposed and developed into boundless, unbelievable martial arts truths, grand Tao divine abilities, techniques of the heavens and the earth. These phenomena were created by Luo Fan unintentionally. However, this unintentional phenomenon had already caused Hong Jun and the others to be engrossed in it. As they followed Luo Fan into the search cave, Hong Jun and the rest felt as if they were walking towards the origin of the world step by step. With every step they took, they seemed to be approaching the unfathomable supreme great Tao. The excitement and anticipation that arose from listening to Luo Fan's lecture gradually calmed down. In the end, it turned into an indifferent and natural state of cultivation. When Luo Fan sat cross-legged and faced them, Hong Jun and the rest had already lost all perception of the outside world. All distracting thoughts had been completely eliminated. Only a sense of piety remained in their minds. Luo Fan smiled when he saw this. This smile was like the legendary Buddha's smile. It enveloped the entire cave in a calm joy, causing Hong Jun and the rest to unknowingly wear a faint smile on their faces. Luo Fan did not hesitate. He immediately began to lecture. Even though he was brewing in his heart, he was already able to trigger the endless changes in the surrounding space. Once he started speaking, the phenomenon had reached an unimaginable level. The moment Luo Fan spoke the first word, the incomparably mysterious search cave completely disappeared. It was replaced by a boundless void. In this boundless void, only Luo Fan, Hong Jun, Luo Fu, Guangpu, Lei Jiuxiao, Luo Chunyang, and Luo Shuan existed. As Luo Fan spoke, the void trembled, changed, and was born and destroyed. Mountains, rivers, the sun, the moon and the stars, birds and beasts, wind, rain, thunder and lightning, deserts. Almost everything that could or couldn't exist in the world was constantly being born and destroyed, constantly changing, and constantly evolving in the void. Luo Fan's lecture this time was to give Hong Jun and the rest the ability to establish their own sections. However, it was from a strategically advantageous position. He directly spoke from the essence of the world that he had comprehended and contained the various mysteries of the great Tao that he had comprehended over the years. Through various words, tones, and phenomena, he imparted to everyone present. Although he did not directly preach the Tao Fruits Way scripture, he also contained the various mysteries of the Tao Fruits Way scripture. If anyone present could completely comprehend all the great Tao that Luo Fan had spoken of, then in their future cultivation, they probably wouldn't need Luo Fan's guidance. They would be able to smoothly cultivate to Luo Fan's current realm and easily obtain the primordial unity Tao fruit. However, it was a pity that this was impossible. One needed to comprehend the Tao, not obtain it just by listening to it. As for the Tao fruit, it could only be obtained by proving it. Just listening to the Tao and imparting it would not allow one to obtain the true Tao realm, nor would it be possible to prove any Tao fruit. If that was not the case, why would Luo Fan need to go through so much trouble to increase the power of the primordial world to deal with the great tribulation of the world? He only needed to find some Khanate gods and impart all his great Tao to them, right? Although the great Tao that Luo Fan talked about was all-encompassing and included almost all the mysteries of the great Tao that he had comprehended over countless years, Hong Jun, who had comprehended the most out of everyone present, had comprehended less than 10%. As for Muzi Luan and the rest, they could only comprehend less than 1/1000 of it. Luo Fan had already expected this. Although he was not very satisfied in his heart, he did not stop talking. He hoped that these disciples could comprehend more, obtain greater progress, comprehend more mysteries, and finally have the ability to establish their own sect. Luo Fan's lecture lasted for 3 years. 3 years was not considered long in the primordial world. Almost any Khanate god only needed to take a nap, comprehend the Tao, and cultivate a small Dharma art. 3 years would pass. However, if it was in the Void Wuji Palace, it could probably be extended to as much as 400,000 years. To Luo Fan, he had done his best to spend so much time talking about the great Tao for Hong Jun and the rest. On this day, Luo Fan finished talking about Panga's creation of the world. It could be considered as a summary of all the mysteries of the great Tao that he had talked about in the past 3 years. Then he stopped. When he started talking about Panga's creation of the world, the surrounding phenomenon turned into a chaotic scene. A giant used a giant axe to split it apart, separating the clear from the turbid, and stabilizing the earth, water, fire, and wind, creating an infinite world. During this entire process, practically every flow of air, every sound, every surge of light and shadow, Every movement of the giant, every surge of the earth, water, fire, and wind, and every point of the infinite world contained boundless mysteries. Although it was only a small scene, it contained all the mysteries of the grand Tao that Luo Fan had comprehended through his boundless efforts since he came to the primordial world, and even all the benefits he obtained from Panga's origin spirit were contained within it. Unfortunately, there's still a world of difference between my cultivation level and Panga's. The mystery contained in this scene is not even a billionth of the real creation of the world. Luo Fan swept his eyes over the natural phenomenon of the world, and a trace of a sigh flowed through his mind. As he stopped talking after he finished talking about Panga's creation of the world, the phenomenon that had appeared for 3 years instantly collapsed and disappeared. The true appearance of the Seeker Cave appeared in the surroundings again. Luo Fan, Hong Jun, and the others reappeared in the Seeker Cave. Although Luo Fan himself was very dissatisfied with the scene of Pangu splitting the heavens in the end, the scene had already been engraved in the depths of the consciousness of Hong Jun and the others, shocking their minds and souls. Even Hong Jun felt that his own soul had almost collapsed because of this scene, and he had a feeling that he could not bear it. The faces of the other Tree Luan and the others instantly turned pale. Their souls could not bear such a scene at all. Their souls, under self-protection, directly excluded this scene from their minds. Although this scene had entered their eyes and flowed through their minds, it was unable to leave any trace in their memories. Luo Fan looked at the changes in their expressions. He sighed in his mind. He knew that he had been too anxious. However, it was fine. After all, Hong Jun still had a slight impression in his memory. This would be extremely beneficial to his future cultivation. At that moment, although Luo Fan had stopped preaching and the various phenomena around him had completely disappeared, Hong Jun and the others still had not woken up. Their expressions were still blank, and there were still countless strange scenes flickering in their eyes. It was obvious that they were still immersed in the mysteries of the great Tao that Luo Fan had revealed in the past 3 years. Luo Fan knew that this was the process of them understanding the great Tao that he was talking about again. The longer they were immersed in this state, the greater the benefits they would obtain. Although it could not be compared to when they were listening to him preaching, they could obtain greater benefits than when they were cultivating. Therefore, Luo Fan only sat above and waited quietly. He did not disturb them. Another 10 days passed just like that. After the 10th day, the first person to wake up was not Luo Chunyang, who had the lowest cultivation, nor was it Lei Jiuxiao, who had not achieved the earth immortal Tao fruit. Instead, it was Tian Yi, one of the 3 female innate gods. After Tian Yi woke up on the 10th day, she discovered the situation around her and saw Luo Fan looking at her in front. She was also an innate god who had already achieved the Tao. After a slight deduction, she knew what was going on. She revealed a look of pity, but she only bowed to Luo Fan and waited quietly at the side. One day, Lu Xia also woke up. Another day, the Tree Luan woke up. After the 3 of them woke up, they looked at each other and felt inexplicably shocked. However, at the same time, they felt that everything was reasonable. The 3 of them were innate gods who had already achieved the Tao. Each of them had great magical powers that could move mountains and drain seas. Their qualifications were also quite strong. However, even so, they could not compare to Luo Fan's disciple who had not achieved the Tao. Even Luo Chunyang, who had just reached the crossing disaster realm, could not compare to them. How could they not be shocked? However, as long as they thought about the fact that they were Luo Fan's disciples, everything seemed to be reasonable. After all, Luo Fan's ability was so incredible. It was natural for his disciples to have such performance. After another 10 days, Luo Chunyang woke up. After another 5 days, Lei Jiuxiao woke up. After waiting for 3 months, Luo Fu and Guang Pu woke up one after another. Chapter 378. Becoming independent and reforging treasures. From the time everyone woke up, it could be seen that among Luo Fan's disciples, the one who had received the most of Luo Fan's teachings was still Hong Jun. Furthermore, he had far surpassed all the other disciples. If they were to go down, The one who was second only to Hongjun was not Luo Fu or Guangpu, but Luo Chunyang. This seemed difficult to understand, but in reality, it was very obvious. It could be seen from the time everyone woke up. Luo Chunyang was the first to wake up because his cultivation was far inferior to the others. If everyone's cultivation and attainment were to be placed on the same level, then the one who woke up the slowest, other than Hongjun, would definitely be Luo Chunyang. Luo Fan waited and observed silently during this process. Luo Chunyang, Zhui Luan, and the others also waited and observed. Luo Chunyang's mental state was very good. He did not feel imbalanced because his parents, Uncle Masters, and Uncle Masters woke up later than him, nor did he lose his patience. Instead, he used the opportunity to digest what he had learned from listening to the teachings for 3 years. As for Zhui Luan and the other two who had just been taken in, they seemed rather disappointed. They had experienced quite a bit of torture during the process of waiting. However, this also allowed their minds to be tempered to a certain extent. It could be considered an unexpected gain. When Hongjun woke up, he immediately knew how long he had been in that state of comprehension for. He could not help but feel very guilty. He stood up and apologized to Luo Fan. Luo Fan smiled faintly and said, "There's no need to say anything more. I'm only gratified that you have only woken up now, but I will not blame you." "Thank you, Master," Hongjun said respectfully. "All right, since all of you have finished listening to the teachings, what you need to do in the future is to organize the teachings I have taught. It would be best if you can organize some techniques related to yourselves and form a cultivation system so that you can establish your own sect and pass it down in the future," Luo Fan said with a smile. "Understand." Everyone present, including Hongjun, Luo Fu, Guangpu, and even Luo Chunyang and Zhouwan bowed. Although Luo Chunyang was Luo Fan's grandson, he had just finished listening to Luo Fan's sermon, so it was appropriate to call him a disciple. Luo Fan saw that they all understood his meaning, nodded his head, and said to Hongjun, Luo Fu, and Guangpu, "Although the three of you have already established your own sects and have your own cave residences, normally I would let you go back and cultivate, but now that the great calamity of heaven and earth is about to arrive, time is indeed quite tight, and you need a longer period of time to properly cultivate. You should first enter the limitless void palace to cultivate." I couldn't ask for more. Hongjun and the other two were naturally overjoyed. They had naturally seen Luo Fan's limitless void palace before. However, compared to before, the limitless void palace had undergone a tremendous change. They were naturally looking forward to seeing the world inside the Wuji Palace again. They hoped to understand what kind of changes had taken place there. Hearing their reply, Luo Fan nodded and turned to say to Zhouwan and the others, "You don't have your own cave residences yet, so you can cultivate in the Wuji Palace first. When the time is right, I'll let you out and let you face the great tribulation of heaven and earth together." "I understand." Luo Chunyang and the others were also overjoyed. After Luo Fan finished instructing everyone, with a thought, an earthy yellow light rushed out from his sea of consciousness. It rotated above his head and condensed into a simple and inexplicable palace that seemed to have existed between heaven and earth since ancient times. It was as if it was born from heaven and earth and could control the infinite space and time. After the palace appeared, it rotated slightly and a mysterious power took effect on Hongjun and the others. In an instant, everyone was sucked into the palace. With a thought from Luo Fan, he slowed down the entire sucking process so that Hongjun and the others could take the opportunity to see the interior of the Wuji Palace. From the strange palace to the medium-class world, then to the only complete Kiliacosm. In the end, they arrived at a strange star in the depths of the Kiliacosm. The star was condensed from the pure essence of the stars. It corresponded with a star in the endless starry sky. The essence of the stars it contained was completely the essence of the stars emitted by that star. Its nature was extremely mysterious, and it didn't have any special characteristics. Its quality couldn't be compared to chaotic vital energy, and it was only at the same level as innate vital energy. However, it had the characteristics of calming people's hearts and calming their minds. The moment everyone landed, they felt like they were being comforted by some mysterious power. Although the strength of the surrounding space was so weak that Luo Chunyang could easily tear it into pieces, and the innate vital energy and chaotic vital energy were so thin that they almost didn't exist, they didn't feel any negative feelings at all. They only felt extremely calm, and there was a feeling that their minds were clear and the light of wisdom was flashing faster and faster. They naturally knew that this star was specially chosen by Luo Fan for them. Feeling grateful, they didn't waste any time and scattered in twos and threes. They opened up temporary residences everywhere on this star, immersed themselves in it, and began to cultivate. Although this star was a star that reflected the endless starry sky of the untainted land, it was only a projection after all. The essence of the stars condensed was not too much, and the size of the star was not too big, with a diameter of only hundreds of thousands of miles. For Hongjun and the others, this was a gathering of two poles. They could also communicate with each other through various secret methods and disperse, but it didn't make them cut off from each other. Although Luo Fan didn't enter the Wuji Palace at this time, it was his magic treasure after all. Naturally, he could completely grasp all the changes in it. Seeing Hongjun and the others like this, he was quite satisfied. Although they could communicate, discuss, and improve together when they gathered together, that was not Luo Fan's purpose. After all, Luo Fan preached to them so that they could expand their cultivation methods, form a complete cultivation system, and have stronger adaptability so that more innate gods with different natures could cultivate. Raising their respective cultivation realms was just something they did along the way. If they gathered together, even though they could increase their cultivation level faster, their cultivation would also have greater progress. But in the aspect of expanding their own cultivation methods, they would fall behind. As for why Hongjun and the others were sent to the spirit Kiliacosm instead of the palace, it was also because of this reason. Although the chaotic vital energy in the palace was extremely rich, and the flow of time was the same as that of the spirit Kiliacosm, it was more suitable for them to work hard to absorb primordial chi, to improve their own strength, sacrificial refining magic skills, and to cultivate magic arts, rather than to expand the cultivation system. In contrast, in the spirit Kiliacosm, it was more appropriate and easier to comprehend the mystery with the help of the projection of the entire endless starry sky. Although Jiu Xiao and Chunyang have yet to attain enlightenment, their aptitude and comprehension are outstanding, even higher than mine back then. I believe that they will be able to develop their own cultivation method into a complete cultivation system. Luo Fan thought to himself. With a thought, a young man rushed out from the Wuji Palace and bowed in front of Luo Fan. Wuji greets master. Observe Hongjun and the others for me. If they expand the cultivation system, send them to the palace to cultivate and improve their cultivation realms and strength. When their cultivation reaches the peak, remind me, Luo Fan ordered. Yes. Wuji boy bowed. While speaking, he flashed and disappeared into the Wuji Palace again. Then, he turned around with the Wuji Palace, transformed into a stream of yellow light, and darted into the Mud Pill Palace between Luo Fan's eyebrows. Through a mysterious place in the Mud Pill Palace, it rushed into the world of his sea of consciousness, and stood beside the foot of the bone of Pangu. Seeing this, Luo Fan let go of this matter. With one step, he returned to the liquefied, chaotic, vital energy on the top of Buzhou Mountain. Raising a finger, the cyan robe on his body instantly changed into a square piece of cloth, unfolding in front of him. Instead, a grayish-brown robe appeared on his body. On top of the unfolded square piece of cloth, there was a 15 or 16-year-old girl who seemed to have been startled awake. Her eyes were wide open as she popped out of the cloth. "Master, I haven't had enough sleep. Why did you wake me up?" The girl said while blinking her eyes. "I plan to refine you and make you a real primordial unity treasure," Luo Fan said lightly. Hearing this, the Xuanji boy was overjoyed. He shouted, "Really? Can I become a primordial unity treasure like Brother Wuji?" "Master, you're not lying to me, are you?" Luo Fan smiled and said, "I've had some enlightenment recently. I'm confident that I can make you transform." "Great. Master, hurry up and start." The Xuanji boy was inexplicably excited. As he became excited, the square piece of cloth constantly twisted in the void. The surrounding chaotic vital energy surged rapidly. Obviously, it was affected. Back then, when Luo Fan had just obtained the Grand Unity Dao fruit and refined the Xuanji child once more, due to the profundities of the Grand Unity Dao fruit, the Xuanji child had already reached the peak of the celestial treasures, and he was only a step away from becoming a Grand Unity treasure. Its power was naturally considerable. Although it was only a defensive treasure, when excited, it could also create a strong celestial phenomenon. Luo Fan smiled and raised his hand. The Xuanji boy's body shook and instantly collapsed, turning into endless three-dimensional talismans. Specks of light flickered in the void. With a point of Luo Fan's finger, the light scattered to a radius of 100,000 feet. In an instant, the radius of 100,000 feet seemed to have become a new starry sky. During this process, the Xuanji boy seemed to feel nothing. He still made joyful and excited sounds in the air. Luo Fan did not care about the Xuanji boy. He raised his hand and slapped the void. 129,600 three-dimensional talismans instantly shot out from his palm. These 129,600 three-dimensional talismans rotated rapidly in the air, splitting and recombining. In the blink of an eye, they turned into a light curtain that was very similar to the shape of the cloth. On the light curtain, there were rays of five-colored light flashing rapidly and circulating crazily. It seemed to be evolving some kind of mystery. The light curtain was extremely fast and collided with the cloth in an instant. With this collision, a sound that sounded like the destruction of the void and the collapse of the world rang out from the cloth. The Xuanji child, who had turned into countless specks like the stars in the sky, instantly let out a miserable shriek. Clearly, he had suffered indescribable pain. Even so, the Xuanji boy did not cry out in pain, nor did he ask Luo Fan to stop. Clearly, although the Xuanji boy looked simple, he was not stupid. He knew that this was the only way. He knew that there would definitely be such a step to improve his nature. After the cloth let out a sound that sounded like the destruction of the void and the collapse of the world, it split into hundreds of millions of parts. Every part of it was densely packed, as if there were countless three-dimensional talismans in it. The tiny dots formed by countless three-dimensional talismans instantly dispersed in the void. As if they were alive, they rushed in all directions. In the blink of an eye, they had already rushed out of a radius of 100,000 feet and were about to spread towards the entire primordial world. Seeing this, the Xuanji boy could not help but scream. "Don't run!" Luo Fan naturally did not care about what the Xuanji boy was doing. When he saw this, he was not surprised at all. He only waved his right hand gently. The light curtain that had shattered the cloth turned slightly, and the 129,600 three-dimensional talismans instantly dispersed. They quickly swam in the void and formed a strange vortex. This vortex was born from nothingness, and in an instant, it became incomparably complete. It erupted with a suction force that was enough to devour the heavens and the earth, acting on the densely packed dots that were like living things, like stars. With the effect of the suction force, be it the small dots that the Xuanji boy had scattered and transformed into, the small dots that were like stars in a radius of 100,000 feet, or the small dots that were rushing in all directions like living creatures after the cloth was scattered, wanting to escape to the entire primordial world, they were all pulled back by an unimaginable force and rushed into the vortex. At that moment, the Xuanji boy's voice finally disappeared. It was as if he had fallen asleep, but also as if he had completely disappeared. The suction force produced by the vortex was earth-shattering. Almost no power could stop it. Whether it was the Xuanji boy who had transformed into a star-like body or the small dots that seemed to be made up of countless three-dimensional talismans, they were all thrown back into the whirlpool in an instant, turning into a strange dark green ball of light. In the blink of an eye, only the vortex that was spinning rapidly and emitting endless suction force was left in front of Luo Fan. Other than that, everything else no longer existed. When Luo Fan saw this, he did not hesitate at all and covered it with his left hand. Countless materials rushed out of his sleeves. Each of these materials was not common even in the primordial world. The power contained in them was secondary. The most important thing was that they were rather hard and difficult to break. Many of them had mystical abilities that even the innate gods would be envious of. These materials were thrown into the vortex one by one and were easily twisted by the vortex. They turned into a turbid ball of light and fused into the strange dark green light ball in the center of the vortex. As more and more materials were fused into the vortex, the light ball in the center of the vortex became more and more mysterious. There seemed to be something incredible and indescribable gradually born in it. As this thing was born, the dark green light gradually became dyed with a darker and darker color. The process of Luo Fan throwing in the materials lasted for 3 days and 3 nights. If he counted seriously, the various materials he had thrown in would probably be enough to form a mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall. However, so many materials were thrown into the vortex, but it only made the light ball in the vortex turn greenish-gray and blurry. Its diameter was not even more than 3 feet. Even when the vortex rotated, it did not seem to increase the pressure, and the suction force did not change at all. The whole process was very mysterious, and people could tell at a glance that it contained all kinds of mysterious principles. After 3 days, Luo Fan flicked his left sleeve and stopped the process of throwing in the materials. Although it had only been 3 days and 3 nights, the materials that had been thrown in had almost moved half of Luo Fan's heaven and earth in the sleeve. This was a huge consumption for Luo Fan. After stopping the throwing in of materials, golden and silver light flashed in Luo Fan's eyes, and the power of the sun and moon true pupils burst out completely. In an instant, the space in front of him changed rapidly. The vortex began to change rapidly as time and space rapidly changed. It seemed to rotate countless times faster, and the speed at which the greenish-gray light in the center of the vortex surged also increased by countless times. However, in less than a quarter of an hour, the vortex suddenly shrank and instantly wrapped the greenish-gray light ball. It was compressed with all its might, and in the end, it turned into an extremely small dot like a speck of dust. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Luo Fan's face. The golden and silver light that flickered in his eyes faded slightly, and he once again returned to his deepest state, as if he had been engraved in his eyes. After he withdrew the sun and moon true pupils, the vortex, which had shrunk to the size of a speck of dust, and the greenish-gray light ball suddenly exploded. A sound that contained boundless vitality, like the change of heaven and earth, the rotation of the sun and moon, and the birth of stars, appeared out of nowhere and swept through a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles. In the void, countless multicolored lights appeared out of nowhere, and a strange fragrance assailed the nostrils. Great! After more than 100,000 years, you've finally come out. An extremely sweet and pleasant female voice suddenly sounded, and it entered Luo Fan's ears. Then, a beautiful woman wearing a dark blue palace gown appeared out of nowhere in the multicolored lights and the endless fragrance. Chapter 379. Translated by Hypersheep 325, edited by Mike Hirschwanja. Although less than 15 minutes had passed, under the distortion of time and space by Luo Fan's true pupils of sun and moon, hundreds of thousands of years had passed for the Xuanji child. Such a long period of time was enough for the Xuanji child to grow from the smallest form of spiritual vigor, and for the Xuanji robe to evolve from a hybrid of various materials. In the end, it finally became an inseparable whole. Under the terrifying power of time, those materials finally fused with the layers of restrictions and countless three-dimensional talismans in the Xuanji robe. Finally, all sorts of mysterious and unbelievable changes were produced, fusing with the Xuanji child, allowing the Xuanji child to cross the barrier between an immortal treasure and a primordial treasure, allowing the Xuanji robe to transform from an immortal treasure to a primordial treasure. Its power had increased by more than 10,000 times compared to before. Moreover, the Xuanji child had also become more mature in this process, his spiritual sense becoming more agile and complete. At this moment, as soon as he opened his mouth, Luo Fan could sense the extent of his growth. To be able to take this step is also the result of your hard work. If it wasn't for your hundreds of thousands of years of hard work, I'm afraid that you would only be at the peak of the immortal treasure, unable to truly become a primordial treasure. Luo Fan smiled faintly. The Xuanji child shook his head and said, "In those hundreds of thousands of years of refinement, if I still can't break through the bottleneck, then I'm just a piece of rotten wood. It's not worth Master's effort." Hearing this, Luo Fan laughed heartily. He did not linger on this topic and nodded. "That's it then. Since you've already become a primordial treasure, your power has increased by more than 10,000 times. Even if your defensive ability cannot protect me straight into the primordial chaos, there's probably very few things in this primordial world that can harm you. In this way, I should be able to protect my immortal treasure as I travel the primordial ocean. I'll listen to Master's orders." The Xuanji child bowed delicately. Compared to before it had been refined, there was already a huge difference. Its personality seemed to be almost the complete opposite of before it had been refined. However, it did not make Luo Fan feel regret that it had lost its previous feeling. Instead, it seemed to maintain the original feeling that it gave Luo Fan, while adding a temperament that made Luo Fan feel more comfortable. Luo Fan nodded. With a thought, another Luo Fan stepped out of his body and came before him, facing the Xuanji child. The Xuanji boy did not hesitate. After a slight smile, his figure flashed and rushed straight into the newly appeared Luo Fan's body. As it charged, the new Luo Fan of Luo Fan, there was an aura that, even if the entire world was destroyed, it would not be damaged in the slightest. This aura disappeared in a flash. When the color of the immortal robe stabilized, it had become extremely ordinary. It even seemed a little shabby, as if it had gone through countless years, experienced the passage of time, and seen the world change. However, there was no longer any extraordinary performance. One could not tell that it was an earth-shattering primordial unity treasure that could defend against the attack of a primordial unity Dao fruit cultivator. The power of this magic treasure was quite strong, but in terms of its essence, it had just become a treasure of the immortal path. Although because Luo Fan's will was attached to it, it became a treasure spirit from another point of view, allowing this treasure of the immortal path to exert power that was close to the peak of the golden immortal realm. Its essence was far inferior to a real primordial unity treasure. It could not even be compared to a golden immortal realm cultivator, let alone Luo Fan's own body. Under such circumstances, although this magic treasure could be equivalent to Luo Fan on a certain level, its body had become its biggest weakness. If Luo Fan wanted this magic treasure to replace him and travel the untainted ocean, he needed to solve this huge weakness. It was because of this that he had to refine the robe of Xuanji again. "Go," Luo Fan said to the magic treasure. The magic treasure nodded and did not answer. It took a step forward and disappeared in front of Luo Fan. This magic treasure could also be said to be Luo Fan. Naturally, it did not need too many words to understand all of Luo Fan's thoughts, and there was no need for any pleasantries. Seeing the magic treasure disappear, Luo Fan smiled and took a step forward. He entered the Wuji Palace of the Void and came to the strange hall. He sat cross-legged on the platform in the center of the Thunder Sea and slowly closed his eyes. He operated the primordial unity Dao fruit and quietly polished his mysterious magic power that contained infinite, incredible power. Luo Fan's magic treasure could only move forward with the help of the Nether Network in the Void. Almost every time it flashed, it would travel hundreds of billions of miles. The Nether Network could be transmitted between the 129,600 regions of the untainted land in the blink of an eye. Naturally, it had a very subtle and mysterious power of transmission. This power of transmission was extremely mysterious. It was aimed at thoughts that had no substance and seemed to be real. But how amazing was Luo Fan's ability? With a single thought, he could use the supreme power of the void to turn himself into an existence that was similar to thoughts. He could use the nether network to travel through the void and quickly cross layers of space and great distances. Luo Fan had a limit to the supreme power contained in the void of heaven and earth. Therefore, this kind of existence that turned his body into a kind of willpower was naturally different from a real willpower. However, it could not be like the willpower which instantly flowed across the entire untainted land from Mount Zhou to another extreme of the untainted land. That was why he needed to move his body across hundreds of billions of kilometers of space in a flash. Then, he needed to break out of that state and borrow the supreme power of the world to transform his body. It took Luo Fan 1 day and 1 night to travel from the northwest extreme of the untainted land to the east extreme of the untainted land. That was where the Fuso tree was. Although Luo Fan had already seen the shape of the Fuso tree through the mysterious power of Sky Gazer Boy and had a deep understanding of the power of the Fuso tree through his own extraordinary cultivation realm, it was still the first time he saw the Fuso tree with his own eyes. When he left the Nether Network, he appeared thousands of miles away from the Fuso tree. Standing on an auspicious cloud, Luo Fan looked at the Fuso tree in the distance. He couldn't help but sigh with emotion and a trace of shock. The Fuso tree was indomitable. Just its trunk was thousands of miles in diameter. After the branches and leaves spread out, the area within 1,000,000 kilometers was shrouded in their shadows. At that moment, it was night, but the area within 1,000,000,000 miles of the Fuso tree was bright. It was like noon, and the light was extremely dazzling. Those lights had appeared on the left side of the Fuso tree's largest trunk. Over there was a sun on top of it. The sun was very mysterious. It seemed to be huge and could cover the entire world, but it also seemed very small. It was just a fruit on the Fuso tree, or a bird's nest attached to the Fuso tree. On the right side of this gigantic trunk, there was only a shadow. It was a huge shadow that was like the moon. This shadow was empty, and there was no physical existence at all. However, there seemed to be traces of moon essence seeping out. These moon essence had no vitality, as if they were just remnants. The thing that made the surrounding billions of miles seem like it was daytime was the mysterious sun on the left side of the Fuso tree. In addition to the images of the sun and moon, there were also countless stars above the hibiscus tree. These stars were very dim under the light of the sun and moon, and were almost impossible to detect. However, with Luo Fan's cultivation realm, he could easily detect the existence of these stars. The sun and moon are the fruits, and the stars are the leaves. As expected of the extreme of the east, Luo Fan looked at it, and an indescribable emotion appeared in his mind. Although there were many huge leaves on the Fuso tree, making it look like an ordinary tree, he could easily tell that these leaves corresponded to the stars in the endless starry sky. Every single leaf contained boundless star essence energy. There were billions and billions of leaves on the Fuso tree, and no two leaves were exactly the same. There were billions and billions of different types of star essence chi, and there were no two types of star essence chi that were exactly the same. The endless leaves grew in a very strange way. They seemed to be fixed on the branches of the Fuso tree, but they also seemed to move at any time. They seemed to be slowly flowing according to some extremely mysterious and complicated method, as if they were evolving some kind of the laws of the world and the secrets of the universe. If the first thing I saw after coming to the primordial world was this Fuso tree instead of Buzhou Mountain, I'm afraid that what I'm cultivating now is not the Tao of fruit of Tao, but another Tao that controls the stars, sun, and moon to control the primordial world. Luo Fan's cultivation was extremely profound. He did not even need to seriously comprehend it, and he could see a mysterious mystery on the Fuso tree that was different from the one on Buzhou Mountain. That was the only thought that flashed through his mind. The Fuso tree controlled the laws of the sun, moon, and stars in the endless sky in a mysterious way. The mysteries it revealed were so profound that they were not inferior to the Pangu's spine that formed the northwest pillar of Buzhou Mountain. If he could use this mystery to comprehend a supreme Tao, and then use it to obtain the ability to understand the heavens and the earth, then the final achievement and the cultivation of the Tao of fruit of Tao would have their own victories and defeats. It was impossible to say which was better. Therefore, to Luo Fan, although the Fuso tree contained such a mysterious mystery that reflected the laws of the endless sky and contained the endless mysteries of the sun, moon, and stars, he did not have the desire to immerse himself in comprehending it. If he had enough time, perhaps he could completely comprehend it and use it as a stone to increase his own Tao of fruit of Tao. But right now, he clearly did not have that kind of time. Therefore, Xian stood on the cloud and looked at the Fuso tree for a long time. Luo Fan could only sigh to himself. Oh well, I cannot obtain all the fortune in the world. Let's see who has the fortune to comprehend the Tao of Tao from the Fuso tree. With that said, with a thought, the magic treasure flashed and disappeared without a trace. When it reappeared, it was hundreds of millions of miles to the east. It broke through the Fuso tree's range and went deep into the endless ocean beyond Primordial World. It also entered the East Sea. Primordial World was an extremely high level, an extremely complete world. Even the universe formed by the 3,000 medium-level worlds could not compare to Primordial World. In such a world, it was naturally impossible for there to only be one continent like this. In reality, in Primordial World, other than the Primordial World, there was also the endless ocean. Primordial World had 4 poles. Although the other 3 poles, other than the Earth pole, defined the 3 poles of Primordial World, it was still not the end of Primordial World. Outside of this was the endless ocean. The structure of Primordial World was quite mysterious. It contained countless mysteries that were difficult to guess. Although the boundless ocean was an important part of the untainted world, the core rules of the untainted world, the supreme heavenly Tao, were mostly concentrated in the untainted world. Even the yellow springs were tens of thousands of times rarer in the boundless ocean outside the untainted world than in the untainted world. It was almost to the point that it could be completely ignored. It was also because of this that the 3 poles of Primordial World were regarded as the poles of Primordial World. Luo Fan's previous efforts to deal with the calamity of the world in the past tens of thousands of years were all focused on Primordial World. He did not include the endless ocean. However, it was obvious that this boundless ocean was also a part of Primordial World. In this ocean, which was even vaster than Primordial World, there were countless innate gods being born in it. There were also countless heavenly materials and earthly treasures evolving in it. There were also countless islands dotted on it. If they were gathered together, it would naturally be an unimaginable force. Because of this, Luo Fan had sent the Dharma treasure to the boundless ocean at this time. He was prepared to gather the power of the boundless ocean. Even if he could not provide support to Primordial World because it was too far away, he had to at least protect the boundless ocean so that it would not be bewitched by the heavenly demons and cause damage to Primordial World. The East Sea is the widest, almost spanning the entire Primordial World. The North Sea is the smallest, less than a few trillion miles. The other South Sea and West Sea are only dozens of times larger than the North Sea. The area of the boundless ocean is still concentrated in the East Sea. With the help of the Netherworld Network, Luo Fan roughly combed through the boundless ocean of Primordial World and was completely convinced of his goal. Although the netherworld above the boundless ocean was extremely sparse, its density was not even 10,000th of that in Primordial World. In fact, the further one went, the sparser it became. When it reached the end of the ocean, it would completely disappear. However, the Netherworld Network still existed. Therefore, the Netherworld Network could also cover the boundless ocean. Therefore, Luo Fan could naturally use the Netherworld Network to roughly sense the situation of the boundless ocean. It was naturally very easy for him to know the structure of the boundless ocean. As for the East Sea, South Sea, North Sea, it could actually be regarded as non-existent. After all, there was no definite boundary between the four seas. It was just that Luo Fan had randomly divided the four directions of Primordial World for convenience. At this moment, the part where Luo Fan's Dharma treasure was located was on the East Sea. As for the islands and innate gods on the boundless ocean, most of them naturally existed on the East Sea. There are countless islands in the East Sea. Although the total area is far less than that of Primordial World, almost every island in my previous life is at least comparable to Asia. There are even many islands where innate gods were born. It's a pity that these innate gods were born outside of Primordial World after all. They are in a remote location and have very little Pangu's primordial spirit. Their qualifications are countless times worse than the innate gods on the earth, and it is even more difficult for them to comprehend Tao techniques and divine powers that are eye-catching. It's really a pity. In Luo Fan's mind, there are countless lights of wisdom constantly flashing. The islands on the East Sea were mostly distributed on the Netherworld, but there was an extremely regular pattern. To Luo Fan, it was not difficult to find out the details of such islands. With a thought, with the help of the Netherworld network, Luo Fan had already crossed hundreds of billions of miles in an instant and arrived on the island closest to Primordial World. Floating a height of 10,000 miles, he looked down at the island. He saw that the island had a circumference of hundreds of millions of miles. It was so vast that it was even 10 times larger than the land in the spirit space within the limitless palace that Luo Fan had first opened up. Even if the area of hundreds of Earths were spread out, it would not be enough to fill it. The island was so vast that it was like a continent. Almost any terrain could be occupied on it. Mountains, hills, plateaus, plains, Gobi deserts, grasslands, swamps. As long as it existed in Primordial World, it could be found on this island. It's a pity that the primordial chi here is 10 times thinner than in Primordial World. Luo Fan looked at the island that was like a giant continent, and his mind flashed with a sigh. Everything on this island was good, and there were even countless plants and living creatures. However, the content of the primordial chi was very thin. Although there was chaotic primordial chi, it was extremely thin. It was almost a strand. Even a small ball of chaotic primordial chi could only be condensed from millions of miles or tens of millions of miles. Other than that, there was innate primordial chi. Even this innate primordial chi could not compare to the innate primordial chi in the depths of Primordial World. Compared to what Luo Fan had seen in Primordial World, even the place with the thinnest primordial chi was more than 10 times thinner. Chapter 380. The double-headed, tiger-headed dragon. The reason why Luo Fan stopped above the island was that a powerful being had appeared on the island. This powerful being seemed to be an innate god, but there were some subtle and obscure differences between it and the innate gods that Luo Fan had seen, but they could not be ignored. It was this difference that made Luo Fan pay special attention to its existence. With a thought, Luo Fan landed on the highest mountain on the island, which was hundreds of millions of miles wide, in the blink of an eye. This island was, after all, just an island. Even though it was so vast that the area of hundreds of Earth could not fill it, it was still just an island. Therefore, no matter how tall the mountain on the island was, it could not compare to the untainted land. Although this mountain was the highest mountain on the island, it was only 1,000,000 feet tall. In the untainted land, it was just an ordinary mountain. Not to mention outstanding, it would be considered good if it could barely reach the average level. As soon as he set foot on this mountain, Luo Fan immediately felt a strong dissatisfaction and anger coming from under his feet. Then, a strange roar suddenly rang out. This roar was very mysterious, different from any roar that Luo Fan had heard before, and it did not sound like the language of any life that Luo Fan had seen before. However, it contained a powerful aura. It was as if the entire world was enraged and wanted to destroy Luo Fan's might. As expected, it seems that it did not receive the inheritance of Pan Gu's original spirit. It does not even know the language and does not know the great Tao. This thought flashed across Luo Fan's mind. Even though it was just a roar, it contained an immeasurable amount of information to him. It allowed him to determine the general characteristics of the existence that was roaring through this roar. Luo Fan slightly smiled, lifted his foot, and gently stepped on the ground. In an instant, a mystical change took place in the air. An incomparably mystical and profound power appeared out of nowhere, directly acting on a mountain peak that was 1,000,000 zhang tall. Under this mysterious power, this mountain, which had withstood the scouring of the East Sea for hundreds of thousands of years and the erosion of the world for hundreds of thousands of years without being destroyed, suddenly collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the mountain, which was originally complete and seemed to have been scoured by a powerful force, turned into countless pieces of sand and stones, the largest of which was the size of an ant. They slid down with a rustle. The falling sand and stones rolled in all directions like waves, burying the area within a radius of tens of thousands of miles in the blink of an eye. Roar! A roar that was even more obvious, even more furious, and contained even more power rang out. Under this roar, the millions of tons of sand and stones buried in the surging sand and stones seemed to explode, creating a huge hole. Even the surging sand and stones slowed down slightly. Although the power contained in this roar was extremely powerful, even as if the world was angry, to Luo Fan, who had attained primordial unity Tao fruit, it was like a spring breeze. It did not make him feel the slightest pressure. Luo Fan maintained his original position. Due to the collapse of the mountain, there was no support, so he seemed to be floating in the void. Golden and silver light flashed in his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he saw the entire appearance of the roaring existence. It was an existence that was more than 700,000 feet tall. It was shaped like a two-headed dragon, but its two heads were like tiger heads. They coiled together and happened to be in the middle of this 1,000,000 feet tall mountain. This 1,000,000 zhang tall mountain was like the thick armor it was wearing. At this moment, the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon appeared after Luo Fan collapsed the mountain. After the mountain that was protecting its body collapsed, the four eyes of the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon turned red, and an uncontrollable aura of anger seeped out of its body. The thin, innate energy in the void and the wisps of chaotic energy surged crazily, as if they were boiling. There was also the endless essence of the moon and the stars that were condensed together through some mysterious and unpredictable method, turning into rolling clouds and mist that revolved around the body of the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon. The twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon leaped up and roared at the same time. Its body shook, and both of its heads spewed out a big mouthful of condensed explosive energy. Then, it fiercely slammed towards Luo Fan. It covered the sky and the earth, as if the sky was falling and the earth was cracking. It wanted to cover Luo Fan in the endless, explosive energy. Luo Fan frowned, and a pitiful thought flashed in his mind. The amount of energy was so huge that it was several times more than the amount of energy that a golden immortal cultivator could produce. However, this was a method of using vital energy, and it was extremely crude. Any living creature that ascended from the limitless void palace's small kiliacosm could use a method that was dozens or even hundreds of times more exquisite than this method, let alone Luo Fan. Such a huge amount of energy was completely wasted on the body of the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon. The two explosive energies, one leaning towards yin and the other leaning towards yang, would produce an explosive reaction when they came into contact with each other, producing a destructive force that was hundreds of times stronger than the previous one. And these two kinds of yuan qis were even more overwhelming, directly enveloping the area within a radius of 1,000 miles. If Luo Fan didn't care about it, then the area within a radius of 1,000 miles would be annihilated and completely turned into powder. Luo Fan secretly felt that it was a pity. He raised his right hand and waved it gently. In the void, an incomparably mysterious and terrifying force appeared out of nowhere. This force seemed to cover the entire world, enveloping the void within a radius of 10,000 miles. In an instant, it suddenly shrank, quickly gathering the two energies that had exploded because they came into contact with each other. In the process, the energy was constantly transforming, changing its original explosive nature into gentleness and gentleness. In a short while, it had turned into a small ball of strange substance that looked like flowing water, appearing on Luo Fan's right hand. When the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon saw this scene, its four eyes were filled with extreme horror. It gradually stopped ejecting energy and floated in the void blankly. Luo Fan waved his hand casually, gathering all the energy ejected by the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon on his right hand. In the end, it formed a slightly black, basketball-sized sphere that seemed to be crystal clear and somewhat transparent. This sphere was like flowing water, constantly twisting in Luo Fan's hand, constantly changing into various shapes. It seemed extremely mysterious and profound. It seems that it only knows how to instinctively absorb energy to strengthen its body, but it doesn't know how to purify the energy and polish its spirit. It's really a pity for such a body that's even better than an innate god's. Luo Fan sighed inwardly as he examined the small sphere that was formed by endless energy in his hand. His true pupils of the sun and moon were extremely powerful. With just a slight glance, he was able to see through the essence of the energy. Moreover, through the ability to see through the past and the future in the blink of an eye, he was able to clearly see how the powerful existence was born, how it grew, and how it had lived all these years. This powerful existence was an existence similar to an innate god, but its essence was slightly higher than an innate god's. Because its essence came from outside, the primordial world. When Pangu created the world, it was a trace of chaos that was brought into the world from the chaos outside, the prehistorical era. Through the nourishment of the chaos power source that was formed after Pangu created the world, it evolved, promoted, and finally grew into a powerful creature. From a certain point of view, it was naturally also an innate god, but its essence was even higher than an innate god's. If it knew how to cultivate the Tao and worked hard to seek the supreme Tao of the primordial world, it would definitely be able to easily obtain unimaginable divine abilities and possess unbelievable power. But unfortunately, this powerful existence didn't obtain the inheritance of Pangu's primordial spirit. Although it had such a high essence, it only knew how to continuously absorb all the energy in its surroundings and absorb all the energy into its body to instinctively grow its body and increase its own energy. Over the past hundreds of thousands of years, although its extremely high essence allowed it to grow to its current height of hundreds of thousands of meters and absorb an enormous amount of energy that was comparable to any golden immortal realm cultivator, its essence of life was even inferior to Luo Chunyang's. The power it could exert was so great that even Luo Chunyang could easily deal with it. Roar! The two-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon roared at Luo Fan. This roar contained a lot of thoughts. Although it was just a roar, it contained a lot of information like a language. Even for cultivators who had just attained the Tao and were only at the itinerant immortal realm, it was extremely simple to understand the thoughts contained in the voice through the voice, let alone Luo Fan who had already attained the grand unity Tao fruit. When the roar came, Luo Fan had completely understood what the two-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon wanted to express. What are you? Why did you destroy my home? This was the thought that the two-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon wanted to express. Luo Fan smiled and said, I'm Luo Fan, a cultivator. Seeing that you are quite powerful, I would like to ask you to help me get through the tribulation of heaven and earth. Please forgive me for my rudeness. The language that Luo Fan used was naturally the language passed down by Pangu, which was the most original language in the untainted land and could describe the great Tao of heaven and earth clearly. Naturally, he would not change his language to cater to the two-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon. Even though the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon seemed to have a complete spiritual consciousness and seemed to be reasonable, for Zhou Bao, its essence was still too low. It could not even be compared to innate deities, so how could it bend its own will to cater to Zhou Bao? Even so, Luo Fan still considered the fact that the twin-headed tiger-headed dragon could not speak. He had clearly expressed his thoughts in his words, and he did not need to worry that the twin-headed tiger-headed dragon would not be able to understand what he was saying. The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon roared again, expressing the following: Luo Fan. Who is Luo Fan? That's my name. How should I address you, Your Excellency? Luo Fan smiled and said indifferently, not caring about the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon's words. At this time, the sand and rocks caused by the collapse of the mountain had completely calmed down. The place where the mountain, which was originally thousands of meters high, had been turned into a desert. The numerous plants and creatures that were born from the interweaving pneuma were completely buried by the sand and rocks caused by the collapse of the mountain. There was no longer any life within a radius of thousands of miles. My name? I see. I don't have a name. The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon roared and conveyed its thoughts. Luo Fan spoke. Although he spoke in Pangu's language, what he conveyed was the thoughts contained in his words. Therefore, although the two-headed tiger-headed dragon did not know what a title was, when Luo Fan said the word title, it completely understood what a title was and what it was used for through the intent Luo Fan had imprinted on it. That was why it opened its mouth and transmitted those words. My friend, you can look for one in the future, or you can give a name. I came to find you this time to deal with the great tribulation of heaven and earth in thousands of years. The great tribulation will affect a wide area. Even if you're in the East Sea, you might be affected. Therefore, I want to ask you to help me deal with the great tribulation. What do you think? Luo Fan smiled. This time, his words were a little longer and contained a little more meaning. Although the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon had a complete consciousness, it had never communicated with any living creatures. It did not even have a language. How could it easily understand what Luo Fan was trying to convey? Therefore, the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon floated in the air for nearly a quarter of an hour before it understood what Luo Fan meant. It roared, "Since there is a great tribulation of heaven and earth, I will go with you, Luo Fan." The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon did not know how to be polite. Since Luo Fan said his name was Luo Fan, it naturally referred to Luo Fan by his name. Luo Fan did not mind. He nodded and said with a smile, "Since you have agreed to what I said, you can enter the world I created to cultivate. I will talk to you in the future." The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon had never interacted with any living creatures. Although it had a complete consciousness, its thinking was simple. Because it had promised Luo Fan, it naturally listened to Luo Fan's instructions. It roared to express its agreement. Luo Fan did not hesitate. He raised his hand and patted the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon. The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon gradually shrank. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk to 3 inches. With a gentle wave, the air around the 3-inch two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon rippled. Then, the 3-inch two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon disappeared from the untainted world. When it reappeared, it was in the dimensional space inside the Wuji Palace. The two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon felt its body tremble. Then, it found that its surroundings had changed greatly. After observing for a while, it found that the surrounding innate essence chi, chaotic essence chi, terrain, and so on were slightly worse than the island it was originally on. However, there were countless living creatures here. Compared to the island that only had some living creatures, it was like heaven. It was extremely lively. After arriving here, the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon, which had been lonely for hundreds of thousands of years, could not help but be overjoyed. It could not help but roar to the sky to express its joy. After the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon entered the dimensional space, it returned to its original height of hundreds of thousands of feet from its original size of 3 inches. When it roared in the void, the momentum it produced was so strong that it shook the heavens and the earth. This caused all the living beings in this dimensional realm to tremble in fear. They felt a boundless might descend from the heavens, pressing down on their bodies. It made them feel as if there was an existence in this world that none of them could resist. They were all trembling with fear and panic. From the birth of this dimensional realm until now, it had already been tens of thousands of years. This period of time was not too long for innate gods. However, for ordinary living creatures, it was a very long time. During these tens of thousands of years, the living creatures in the dimensional space had multiplied for tens of thousands of generations. The entire dimensional space had become extremely lively. Moreover, although the dimensional space could not compare to the untainted land, it was still a very suitable world for cultivation. Moreover, there were many living creatures from the minor kiliocosm who had ascended to the dimensional space through some means. Although Luo Fan did not set up the rules for ascending from the minor kiliocosm to the dimensional space, it was still a world of two different levels. There were many living creatures in the minor kiliocosm. After tens of millions of years, there were naturally many living creatures in the minor kiliocosm who had ascended to the dimensional space through various means. This was not something difficult to understand. All of these caused many cultivators to appear in the dimensional space. The arrival of the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon was an extremely huge change for these cultivators. For these cultivators, whether the result was good or bad, they would only know in the future. They could not make a conclusion so early. However, it was certain that the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon would definitely benefit greatly. After all, no matter how the living creatures in the dimensional space treated the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon, whether they were hostile or friendly, it was an extremely huge change for the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon. It was enough to make the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon grow even more. It could even use the cultivation methods of these cultivators to fight against enemies to comprehend cultivation methods. After Luo Fan sent the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon into the dimensional space, he no longer cared about it. If it was in the past, he might have thought of nurturing the twin-headed tiger-headed flood dragon so that it could grow into a truly powerful cultivator, so that it could contribute some power to the calamity of the world thousands of years later. Chapter 381. A child born from heaven and earth. The reason for this was naturally because the number of innate gods he'd gathered had reached hundreds of thousands at this moment, and it wasn't like before when he only had 2 or 3 innate gods. Under such circumstances, the amount of effort he had spent to nurture the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon was not equivalent to the amount of power he had obtained. As such, he had only sent the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon into the dimensional realm to create a condition for it to learn language and cultivate. As for how far it could grow, it would depend on the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon itself. After sending the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon into the dimensional realm, Luo Fan took a step forward and arrived at a location near the center of the island. There was a deep crypt there. In this crypt, there was an endless stream of chilling wind gushing out from time to time, constantly accumulating around the crypt. Gradually, it formed a black fog that did not disperse and covered an increasingly wide area. The black fog was extremely mysterious, and there seemed to be endless ghostly wails and howls coming from it. It was extremely ferocious and covered an area of 10,000 miles. It was as if it was alive, constantly rolling and changing into all sorts of strange forms. There are actually 2 such mysterious things on an island. It's really rare. Luo Fan looked at the black mist below, and a trace of admiration flashed in his mind. His true eyes of the sun and moon possessed limitless power. He was able to discern the nature of the black fog with just a glance. Although this black fog wasn't a real living being, it had many of the characteristics of living beings. It possessed a kind of spiritual consciousness that wasn't very complete. The spiritual consciousness was not even comparable to the spiritual consciousness displayed by Guangpu when Luo Fan first met her. Its nature was not that of an innate god, nor was it born from the source of chaotic vitality. However, it possessed the characteristics of various living beings. It was like a treasure spirit that was born into a magic treasure. The eerie winds that formed the black fog rushed out from 30,000 miles underground. They were extremely in nature, condensed from the boundless, innate water essence in the ocean. As they passed through the Yellow Spring bestowed them with some wonderful characteristics of living beings. That was the reason why there was such a strange spiritual consciousness. The existence of this spiritual sense, coupled with the nourishment, and refinement of hundreds of thousands of years, caused the wind that continuously accumulated around the entrance of the cave to gradually undergo some mysterious changes. From the originally formless wind, it gradually condensed into something that existed in the form of a solid object. Because of the nourishment of the boundless mysteries of the world, it gave birth to countless natural runes, giving it the characteristics of some magic treasures. Luo Fan gently waved his hand. Heavenly flowers instantly appeared out of thin air, blotting out the sky and enveloping an area of 100,000 miles in circumference. Wisps of multicolored light suddenly appeared, dyeing the area with a beautiful and mysterious hue. At the same time, a faint sound of the Tao lingered in the void. This sound of the Tao was very different from the sound of the Tao that had appeared in the past. It seemed to have condensed into an extremely resonant sentence. The world is heartless, leaving only one line. All living beings have no consciousness, and the void is born. This sentence was like the murmur of the world, or like Pangu, who had already transformed into all living beings in the world, was sleep-talking. It conveyed some kind of mystery of the great Tao that even Luo Fan was moved. As this strange phenomenon appeared, the surging black fog below suddenly seemed to boil, and the intensity of the rolling was nearly 100 times more intense. During this process, the ghostly wails and howls seemed to be soothed by the sound of the great Tao, and instead they calmed down a lot. At this moment, a huge three-dimensional talisman appeared out of thin air, covering the area within a radius of 100,000 miles. An indescribably mysterious power appeared out of thin air, constantly shuttling through the black fog. This three-dimensional talisman had a very strange shape. It was like a huge human figure curled up into the shape of a baby, sleeping in its mother's womb. The mysterious power shuttling through the black fog seemed to be the breathing of the humanoid three-dimensional talisman. As the power surged out of the humanoid three-dimensional talisman, the speed of the eerie wind that surged out of the cave suddenly increased by 10,000 times. As soon as the eerie wind appeared, it directly fused with the black fog, causing it to tremble as if it was growing. The ghostly wails and wolf howls that were emitted from the black fog continued to weaken. In the end, they gradually calmed down and turned into a baby-like murmur. They no longer had the shocking feeling from before. Instead, there was an extremely strange and peaceful feeling that was continuously emitted from them. Every time the mysterious power shuttled through the black fog passed through it, it would involuntarily take away strands of strange existences from the black fog and turn them into the humanoid three-dimensional talisman, causing the humanoid three-dimensional talisman to undergo mysterious changes. As these changes occurred, the humanoid three-dimensional talisman constantly shrunk, shrinking from its original radius of 100,000 miles to 90,000 miles, 80,000 miles, 70,000 miles, 6 hours later. The humanoid three-dimensional talisman had actually shrunk to less than 100,000 feet. During this process, the black fog that wrapped around the eerie wind had almost completely disappeared. It had all surged into the humanoid three-dimensional talisman, causing the humanoid three-dimensional talisman to transform from a simple outline of various mysterious lines into something that seemed to have a physical form. Apart from being slightly black, it was no different from a real baby. Luo Fan stood in the air and looked down at the changes below. Faint anticipation flashed through his mind. During these 6 hours, the strange phenomena in the void continued and did not stop. Even the range that they covered did not shrink because of the changes to the three-dimensional talisman and the black fog. Even the world's voice that had condensed into 4 profound and resonant sentences was constantly repeating in an extremely special way. The repetition seemed to contain different mysteries each time. It did not make people feel monotonous or bored, but instead aroused different understandings of the world's voice. As expected, after a long time, the process of the changes below gradually became obvious. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. At this moment, the humanoid 3D talisman turned into a solid form. The chilly wind that rushed out of the crypt was twisted by mysterious power and turned into a solid black ribbon. It extended out of the crypt and connected to the position of the humanoid 3D talisman's belly button through a complex but complicated distortion that contained some kind of the ultimate truth of the world. It was like a real, mysterious umbilical cord. The humanoid three-dimensional talisman breathed in and out. It seemed to have transformed into passing through the umbilical cord. Every time he breathed, he seemed to be extracting something mysterious from the cave and fusing it into the humanoid three-dimensional talisman. In this complicated and mysterious transformation process, the humanoid three-dimensional talisman was also constantly becoming more solid and shrinking. This process of gradually solidifying and shrinking lasted for as long as 10 months. After 10 months, the humanoid three-dimensional talisman still shrunk to less than 3 feet. Moreover, it looked like it was smelted from black jade. It floated above the cave that had a circumference of hundreds of feet. The eerie wind that gushed out of the cave was still connected to the humanoid three-dimensional talisman's navel. However, after rushing out of the cave, it began to rapidly compress. After rushing out hundreds of feet, it was already compressed to the size of a thumb. It did not seem abnormal because of its size. 10 months of pregnancy. If I don't come out now, when will I? Luo Fan chanted. He raised his hand and suddenly swung it down in the void. It was as if a large saber had suddenly chopped down from the void. There was a sharpness that could destroy everything, but also a mysterious and indescribable vitality. As he chopped down, the various phenomena that had filled the void for 10 months suddenly increased by 100 times. The multicolored light became 10 times more dazzling. The heavenly flowers increased by 10 times, and the sound of the world also increased by more than 10 times. Following that, the eerie wind that rushed out of the cave like an umbilical cord was suddenly cut in the middle. As the eerie wind was cut, the humanoid three-dimensional talisman suddenly trembled. Its chest began to rise and fall rapidly. Its body seemed to be in extreme pain. Its eyes suddenly opened, and there seemed to be a flash of fear in them. After a while, the humanoid three-dimensional talisman's rapidly rising and falling chest slowly calmed down. Its painful struggle also gradually stopped. The fear that flashed in its eyes also gradually disappeared. What replaced it was a kind of peace, joy, and endless curiosity. Its body slowly stretched out, and it opened its mouth. With a wah, it let out the first sound since it came to this world. Following the appearance of this voice, the various unusual phenomena that had persisted for 10 months gradually disappeared. After a while, they completely disappeared without a trace. You've finally taken form. From now on, your child Nether, Luo Fan, said as he stepped forward and arrived in front of the baby. When the baby heard Luo Fan's gaze, it closed its mouth. Joy gradually appeared in its eyes. It nodded and said in a very young and awkward voice, "Thank you for the name, Great Immortal." The language it used was the language that Luo Fan spoke. It was also the language that almost all innate gods in this world understood when they were born. However, the way it spoke this language did not seem to be born with it. It was as if it had only learned it later. It seemed very dry and difficult to speak. Luo Fan smiled and raised his hand to cover the child Nether. A doo-doo appeared on the child Nether's body, which seemed to be made of black jade, and covered it. The child Nether was the treasure spirit of a natural magic treasure. That magic treasure was that black fog. It was also the material that made up the body of the child Nether. This magic treasure was born by heaven and earth and formed due to the influence of various mysterious factors. However, it was not as good as the magic treasures refined by Luo Fan. Its divine sense and power were not complete. Apart from the essence of the magic treasure formed after being refined by Luo Fan for 10 months and some power that all magic treasures had, it did not have its own divine sense at all. The power of the magic treasure was not even comparable to some magic treasures with a higher number of restrictions. Not to mention compared to the few magical treasures refined by Luo Fan. However, this magic treasure was born by heaven and earth after all. It also had many characteristics that the magic treasures refined by Luo Fan did not have. That was, it did not need to be refined and could continue to grow with the passage of time. The more time passed, the stronger its power would be. It could even learn all kinds of divine sense through learning. Apart from the slower speed of growth and the lack of bottlenecks, it was not much different from an innate god. From this aspect, although this magic treasure could not be compared to the magic treasures refined by Luo Fan, its essence was much better than the magic treasures refined by Luo Fan. It was also more like a living creature. As Luo Fan looked at the child Nether, his mind and thoughts flashed. After the child Nether was formed, its characteristics were fully revealed and Luo Fan was able to observe it. Therefore, even though the spirit of Nether was formed with his help and he had watched the process for 10 months, it was only now that Luo Fan was able to see the essence of the spirit of Nether. Only then was he able to comprehend the secrets of the spirit of Nether's natural growth and evolution. What a pity! To be able to grow on its own and evolve naturally, it needs the innate chi that only an innate god possesses. It is not something that can be obtained by refining it. It's really a pity. After a while, Luo Fan could not help but sigh. Innate chi was different from innate vital energy and chaotic vital energy. It was a very mysterious existence that seemed to be real and illusory. It was invisible and intangible. Although any innate god could sense its existence, no innate god could capture it, refine it, or even give it to others. In order for living creatures to obtain innate chi, apart from innate gods, only acquired living creatures who cultivated the divine reversion realm and opened the door to innate could obtain it. Other than that, there was no other way. If one wanted to add innate chi to a magic treasure, unless the magic treasure was refined by the innate inextinguishable spiritual light, it would be wishful thinking. Therefore, the ability of the child Nether to grow on its own and evolve naturally could be said to be extinct. Apart from the child Nether, in this world, only magic treasures that were born naturally could possess it. It could be said to be an existence that could not be replicated. Great immortal, why are you looking at me like that? Being stared at by Luo Fan, the Nether Spirit Boy had a feeling that he couldn't keep any secrets from inside out. After a while, he finally couldn't help but ask. Although the child Nether had just taken form and was originally only a treasure spirit with an extremely incomplete spiritual consciousness, the frame that he was attached to was after all a three-dimensional talisman that Luo Fan had condensed. It contained the mysteries of the Great Way that Luo Fan had comprehended, as well as a lot of common knowledge and wisdom. The child Nether had used this frame to take form, so it naturally possessed the common knowledge, wisdom, and mysteries of the Great Way that Luo Fan had involuntarily placed in it. Therefore, although the child Nether had just taken form, he already possessed a rather complete wisdom and knew some common knowledge that he should have. When Luo Fan heard the child Nether's question, he recovered from the process of dissecting him from inside out. He smiled and said, "It's nothing, I just want to study your body. Since you are unwilling, then I won't study it." "Oh, then what have you found out?" The child Nether's speech was already rather smooth. Although it was still a little dry, it was much better than when he first spoke. Luo Fan nodded and said, "I have some thoughts. It's related to your growth. This matter concerns your future, but it's not convenient to tell you directly." "Oh, then forget it." The child Nether nodded and very straightforwardly let this matter go. His wisdom and common knowledge came from Luo Fan, so he naturally felt a sense of closeness towards Luo Fan. It was precisely because of this that he did not feel any disgust when Luo Fan studied his body. At this moment, when Luo Fan said that not telling him was for his own good, he believed it without a doubt. After nodding, he did not speak again. Luo Fan looked at the child Nether and could not help but smile. Although this child Nether spirit was a magical treasure that was born from the heavens and earth, it was also formed with his help. He had watched him grow from the embryonic form to its current form. Although he did not treat him as a son, he still had a kind of amiable and loving heart in his heart. Therefore, he said to the child Nether, "You now need time to learn and grow. How about I send you to a place so that you have more time to learn and grow?" The child Nether's eyes lit up and he said happily, "Yes, great immortal." Luo Fan nodded and said, "Restrain your mind." Child Nether's spirit nodded quickly, and his expression became very serious. Seeing the child Nether like this, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. A bit of spiritual light rushed out from his hand and instantly wrapped around the child Nether. As the spiritual light wrapped around the child Nether's body, the color of the child Nether's body gradually changed from the original black jade to the color of black. With this change, there was no difference between the child Nether and an ordinary baby except for the divine light in his eyes. Seeing this, Luo Fan nodded. As he nodded, the child Nether suddenly turned into a ray of light and instantly rushed into the Niwen between Luo Fan's eyebrows. Finally, in a flash, it rushed into the Wuji Palace of the Void, crossed over the layers of space, and arrived at the medium-class world. Although the flow of time in the small Kiliacosm was 365 times faster than the medium-class world, if the child Nether was sent into the small Kiliacosm, he would definitely be able to obtain more time to grow. However, the small Kiliacosm was after all too complicated and the environment was too poor. If the child Nether was sent into the small Kiliacosm, what kind of existence would it eventually grow into? This was something that Luo Fan could not predict. It was better to enter the medium-class world. Chapter 382. A simulated starry sky after the little spirit of Nether was sent into the dimensional realm by Luo Fan. He was born in a small mountain that was emitting endless Yin-Chi. This small mountain was in the southeast of the dimensional realm, close to the edge. Within the surrounding 10,000 miles, there were only all kinds of beasts without intelligence. There were no cultivators who had ascended from the dimensional realm, and there was no twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon either. The little spirit of Nether blinked his eyes and found that he had arrived in another world from Luo Fan. The surrounding environment was completely different from before. "This is a good place." Boy Nether's spirit waited for a moment and muttered. He curled up his body and lay down on the ground. He began to slowly absorb the endless Yin-Chi around him. His spiritual consciousness also gradually fell into a dreamlike state. The moment the little spirit of Nether entered the dimensional realm. In a place far away from the mountain in the dimensional realm, a twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon suddenly let out an incomparably loud roar. This roar contained an extremely complex emotion. It seemed to be looking forward to it, reminiscing it, and longing it. At this moment, the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon sensed that it was very familiar with an aura that had accompanied it for hundreds of thousands of years had suddenly arrived in this new world. This caused it to throw the lively scene of this dimensional realm to the back of its mind and try to find the origin of this familiar feeling. This was also why the twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon and the little spirit of Nether were born on the same island, and they had evolved together. Even though they had not seen each other for hundreds of thousands of years, they could still sense each other's aura. And for these two spiritual consciousnesses, they were the only companions that they had sensed in the past hundreds of thousands of years. This kind of intimate and familiar feeling would naturally arise. "Where are you? Where are you?" The twin-headed, tiger-headed flood dragon roared wildly. The thought in its voice was so obvious that even beasts without intelligence could clearly sense it. After Luo Fan had sent the Een Spirit Boy into the dimensional realm, he no longer cared about the changes inside. To send the two of them into the same dimensional realm, this Luo Fan didn't have much of a plan in mind. It was only a sudden whim. and he didn't spend too much time or energy to calculate it. However, with his cultivation level, since he would have a sudden impulse towards this matter, compared to doing this, there would definitely be benefits. Hence, he didn't hesitate at all after being struck by a sudden impulse. With a thought, the situation of the entire island was reconstructed in his mind. In the blink of an eye, he knew that there was nothing else on the island that caught his attention. He lifted his foot and strode forward, disappearing from the island. When he reappeared, he was hundreds of millions of kilometers away from the island. This place was within the eastern sea, outside of the primitive world, and it was so vast that it had arrived at an unimaginable level. Hundreds of millions of kilometers, billions of kilometers, tens of billions of kilometers of emptiness were nothing out of the ordinary. However, the place where Luo Fan stopped had no island. It was also an empty area. Even if an innate god came here, he would only see an ordinary sea surface. It didn't look any different from other places. Luo Fan appeared directly above the surface of the sea, floating at a height of 1,000 miles above the sea. He was standing on a small cloud that was only 1 zhang in circumference, looking down at the scene below. In his eyes, the golden and silver light flickered faintly. In his pupils, there were countless lights and shadows constantly flickering. These lights and shadows showed the approximate changes of the sea surface over the past tens of thousands of years. After a long time, Luo Fan nodded. He already knew the difference between this sea surface and other places, and why he had such a strange feeling. He raised his hand and waved gently. In the void, countless innate pneuma condensed, outlining a mysterious three-dimensional talisman in front of him. This mysterious three-dimensional talisman had a radius of 100 feet and was shaped like a shuttle. The lines on it were extremely complicated and mysterious. The lines that formed this three-dimensional talisman were as thin as a spider's silk, but the three-dimensional talisman that was outlined was in the shape of a shuttle. One could not even see any hollowed-out shape. After the three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman was formed, Luo Fan raised his hand and pressed down gently. The three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman instantly rushed down, crossing thousands of kilometers at an unimaginable speed, and directly rushed into the sea below. The moment the three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman rushed into the sea, it suddenly produced a mysterious suction. This suction was aimed at the infinite water essence. At the moment when the suction was produced, the water essence within hundreds of thousands of kilometers of the surrounding area swarmed in, crazily squeezing into the three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman, constantly enriching it. With this change, the three-dimensional talisman produced an increasingly large and obvious whirlpool. This whirlpool was tumbling, and there seemed to be a faint five-colored color appearing in it. This five-colored color was very strange. It was different from the color of any natural water essence, and also different from the color of any life. Instead, it looked like the five-colored glow that was born when Luo Fan commanded the world. This five-colored glow became more and more obvious and more dazzling. When the three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman reached thousands of kilometers under the sea, this five-colored glow was already like the sun. Not only did it cover an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, but it also caused the whirlpool, which had already expanded to a diameter of hundreds of thousands of kilometers, to produce a very strange change, as if the world was turning upside down. It's finally here. Luo Fan's eyes flashed, and such a thought appeared in his mind. This three-dimensional shuttle-shaped talisman finally encountered some incomparably mysterious obstruction in this location thousands of kilometers under the sea. It was an ocean current. It was a seemingly ordinary current, but it was enough to arouse Luo Fan's whim and attract his attention. There was no yellow spring passing through this location. The yellow spring, which was closest to this location, was a full 300 million kilometers away. Moreover, it was only a small tributary. However, in this location, within a radius of nearly 1 million kilometers, there was a very strange ocean current network. The structure of this ocean current network was very similar to the yellow spring. Similar to the yellow spring that flowed 4,900 kilometers below the surface of the sea in the East Sea and was not eroded by the seawater. These ocean currents meandered and flowed thousands of kilometers under the sea. They looked no different from the surrounding seawater, but there was a faint vitality in them. This vitality was very thin and obscure in every inch of the ocean current. However, if all the vitality contained in this ocean current network, which covered an area of nearly 1,000,000 kilometers, was combined, it would form a very strange spiritual consciousness. This was a rather complete spiritual consciousness, similar to the existence of the innate gods. Perhaps this entire ocean current network was an innate god. The ocean current was the body of this innate god. This form of body was, of course, quite wonderful and incredible. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, Luo Fan could not even understand the existence of such a strange life. The shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman that Luo Fan sent out had already reached the top of the ocean current, but it was blocked by the surging seawater brought by the ocean current. With the power of the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman itself, it could no longer go down. The surging seawater brought by the ocean current seemed to contain a power that could crush any matter, and it could crush any existence that approached this ocean current. If the three-dimensional talisman itself did not contain incredible mysteries, if it did not absorb endless water essence in the process of rushing to the bottom of the sea, perhaps the three-dimensional talisman would be instantly destroyed by the surging seawater brought by the ocean current. Above the void, the golden and silver lights were still flickering in Luo Fan's eyes. The moment the three-dimensional talisman stopped, he suddenly let out a soft cry. With this cry, the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman turned slightly, and the endless water essence rushed out of the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman like tentacles, quickly spreading in all directions. These tentacles that rushed out of the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman were very mysterious. The water essence inside condensed into strands of very pure and very condensed lines, sketching into countless complicated and mysterious runes, as if they were loaded with some kind of mysterious power, quickly spreading in all directions along the direction of the ocean current network. During this process, although the vortex caused by the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman's absorption of water essence stopped expanding, it still did not disappear. Obviously, during this process, the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman was still constantly absorbing the endless water essence around it. In this ocean, the innate vitality was thin and the chaotic vitality was very little, but there was one thing that was endless. That was the water essence. Whether it was the innate water essence, or even the acquired water essence, and so on, almost all the water essence was endless. However, this kind of water element essence was mixed together. If Luo Fan didn't have the mysterious magical ability of the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman, it would be very difficult to display the mysterious power of this kind of water element essence. He could only rely on the endless effort of time to extract some essence from this infinite water element essence and use it. At this moment, in the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman, endless complicated and mysterious changes were happening all the time. After the inexhaustible essence of water gushed into the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman, it was purified by a mysterious power, crushed, scattered, and reorganized into strands of mysterious lines. After hundreds of thousands of subtle changes, they combined into strange talisman characters, rushed out of the three-dimensional talisman, turned into hands, and extended in all directions. In this process, almost every minute and every moment, there was endless water essence being consumed, and almost every minute and every moment, there were endless mysterious runes being constructed. An incomparably wonderful sound, which seemed to be able to stay in the void forever and had been existing in the void since ancient times, suddenly appeared. The sea within a radius of tens of millions of miles shook violently with this sound. This vibration seemed to be an overwhelming force that was enough to destroy the world acting on the sea out of thin air. Under the vibration of this sound, The vortex formed by the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman suddenly became chaotic. It seemed to be unable to maintain the original shape of the vortex and began to collapse. Sure enough, this spirit has developed its spiritual consciousness with the help of the endless water essence. It is born with a keen perception of the changes of the water essence. In this sea, it can at least exert the power of the golden immortal realm. Such a thought flashed in Luo Fan's mind. At this moment, the endless tentacles produced by the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman seemed to be oppressed by an extremely great force. Each tentacle seemed to be caught by a giant hand, and the speed of the spreading suddenly slowed down by more than 1,000 times. From 1,000 miles in a breath, it became only a few meters in a breath, but it still continued to spread, as if it was still not satisfied. Another louder and more powerful sound appeared out of thin air. After this sound appeared, the sea within a radius of tens of millions of miles, which was originally only shaking violently, suddenly collapsed like a broken mirror. As if it was solid, it turned into countless tiny fragments and condensed on the surface of the sea. This sound was not limited to the surface of the sea, but surged up without stopping towards the sky, directly passing through where Luo Fan was, and rushed into the astral wind, thunder, and fire layer above 90,000 miles. The astral wind, thunder, and fire layer in the sky was extremely mysterious. It contained endless astral wind, thunder, and fire, as well as the endless mysteries of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The 9 layers of astral wind, thunder, and fire collapsed instantly. All the barriers between the astral wind, lightning, and fire layers were completely shattered, and all the astral wind, lightning, and fire life forms collapsed in the process. In the end, they turned into a mixture of astral wind, lightning, and fire that was like paste, rolling in the void. In the end, because there was no obstruction, no support, it fell from the hole with a loud bang, turning the void within a radius of 10 million kilometers into a scene like the end of the world. In the void, endless astral wind, thunder, and fire fell, and the surface of the sea shattered into countless pieces that were not even the size of a thumb. The vortex that emitted the 5-colored light also collapsed at this moment. As the vortex collapsed, the 5-colored light completely disappeared in an instant. Just its instinct alone are already so powerful. If it is trained, it can also protect a part of the sea. Luo Fan's voice leisurely came out from the endless astral wind, thunder, and fire bombardment, and was no different from before. The endless astral wind, thunder, and fire bombardment around him, and the sound of the Rui shattering the astral wind, thunder, and fire layer above 90,000 miles could not affect him at all. At this moment, Luo Fan was floating on the small, auspicious cloud. He did not even have any defense around him, but no matter how dense the surrounding astral wind, thunder, and fire was, no matter how the sound that constantly echoed in the void was, it could not come within 30 feet of his body. Once any attack came within 30 feet of his body, it would naturally go around, as if it was approaching the magnetic pole. After saying that, Luo Fan's thoughts moved slightly. The auspicious cloud under his feet carried his body straight to the bottom of the sea. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived at the bottom of the sea, above the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional seal. The auspicious cloud also completely disappeared in this process. Although Luo Fan came to the bottom of the sea, he seemed to be in a different space from the surrounding seawater. Although he was in that position, he was not wrapped by the seawater, but the seawater did not seem to be isolated. It still easily flowed past where his body was, as if he did not exist at all, but it was extremely mysterious. At this moment, the endless tentacles of the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional seal had stopped. Although the mysterious suction from its body was still there, it could no longer easily absorb the endless water essence around it. It could only extract it drop by drop, as if the endless water essence around it was suppressed by a strong force. The invisible buzzing sound sounded again. The sea current network below surged rapidly and gradually emitted specks of blue fluorescent light. This blue fluorescent light was very weak in every sea current, but after all, it was distributed in every section of the sea current. As it flickered, it made the bottom of the sea within 1,000,000 miles seem to turn into an endless starry sky, looking extremely gorgeous. You actually know how to cultivate? It seems that your soul sense is quite complete. Why don't you come out to see me? Seeing this, Luo Fan's mind flashed a little bit of inspiration, and he said, although he spoke at the bottom of the sea, his voice was very mysterious. In an instant, it spread over 1,000,000 miles, permeating the entire sea current network below. At the same time, the speed of the countless tentacles from the shuttle-shaped, three-dimensional seal under his feet skyrocketed, as if they had taken stimulants. They spread out at a speed that was tens of thousands of times faster than at the beginning. In the blink of an eye, it had spread to every position of the sea current network of nearly 1,000,000 miles. With a slight wrapping, it had completely surrounded the entire sea current network. Another strange sound sounded. The endless blue fluorescent light emitted from the sea current network flickered rapidly, and in the process, it kept flowing and shifting as if it was evolving some kind of strange principle. The situation of this blue fluorescent light flowing and shifting might be very strange to other innate gods. But for Luo Fan, it couldn't be clearer. That was the process of evolving the operation of the endless stars in the endless starry sky. This was also the reason why Luo Fan said before that he knew how to cultivate. If he didn't know how to cultivate, how could he know how to observe the endless starry sky? How could he know how to simulate the operation of the stars? With this change, there was a thought from the buzzing sound. What are you? Why do you want to control my body? Chapter 383. Stars becoming Tao technique. Even for a cultivator in the golden immortal realm, this torrent of thoughts was unbearable. It was enough to shake their divine soul and seriously injure them. But for Luo Fan, it didn't affect him much. Luo Fan's mind moved slightly, and he easily accommodated this thought. A faint smile appeared on his face. Since you already have the heart to seek Tao and know how to cultivate, you can be said to be my friend. It's inconvenient to communicate in this form. Wait for me to create a form for you, Luo Fan said with a smile, not answering the thought in the strange voice. As he spoke, the tentacle that extended from the shuttle-shaped 3D talisman suddenly shrank. This shrinkage was very strange. It did not completely affect the ocean current, causing the ocean current to shrink. Instead, it directly passed through the ocean current network, as if it was bringing out some mysterious and incomparably profound object in the ocean current. It passed through the ocean current at an extremely fast speed and instantly shrank from millions of miles away to Luo Fan's side. In the blink of an eye, a ball with a diameter of 30 meters condensed in front of Luo Fan. It floated in the seawater, facing Luo Fan from afar. What's going on? Why do I feel this way? A thought suddenly emerged from the 30 meters wide ball in front of him and was directly transmitted into Luo Fan's mind. He easily received it. This time, there was no need to use sound to transmit it. The moment the figure appeared, the wind, lightning, and fire that had descended from the sky due to the buzzing sound that had shattered the barrier of wind, lightning, and fire that covered an area of 1,000,000 miles seemed to have lost all power and gradually calmed down. The mirror-like surface of the sea, which seemed to have collapsed due to the sound, gradually returned to normal. Finally, when the astral wind, lightning fire stopped pouring down and the barrier of the astral wind, lightning fire layer above was formed once again, the surface of the sea once again became calm. It was exactly the same as it had been since ancient times. There was no longer the slightest difference. Only 90,000 kilometers up in the sky, within a 1,000,000 kilometer radius of the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer, which was completely different from the surroundings, could one see what had happened within that 1,000,000 kilometer radius. It was extremely turbid, as if all the astral wind, lightning, and fire interweaved together to form a chaotic scene. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Why don't you use the shape-shifting technique to take on a physical form?" Shape-shifting? No, I've tried many times, but I can't truly shape-shift. The thought continued to emerge from the ball. However, As the thought spread, the ball began to twist and change. In the end, it revealed a human figure that was 30 meters tall. Apart from its size and color, it was exactly the same as Luo Fan. Even Luo Fan's dark green robe could be seen in the 30 meters tall human figure. How can this be? How can I shape shift? The human figure's eyes seemed to be a little dazed and shocked. After a long time, it finally revealed a thought. This is just a kind of materialization method. It can only be used to facilitate communication, but it is not fellow Taoist's real strength. If fellow Taoist is interested in this, I can pass it on to fellow Taoist. Luo Fan smiled slightly. The language that this life form used was Panga's language. It was a language that almost all innate gods would know the moment they were born in the primordial world. From this, it could be seen that this life form did not have an inheritance like the two-headed tiger-headed flood dragon. At the very least, in terms of language, it had inherited Pangu's origin spirit. Therefore, Luo Fan did not need to amplify his thoughts on the language for this life form to sense. He only needed to speak in Panga's language, and this life form would understand completely. Borrowing objects to form. I want to learn this ability. The human figure shook a few times. After a while, a thought filled with excitement was transmitted over. Luo Fan nodded. Without hesitation, he raised his hand and pointed down. In the blink of an eye, a mysterious and unpredictable force was generated out of thin air and transformed hundreds of thousands of times in the shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman. Then, the shuttle-shaped 3D talisman trembled slightly. It turned into a blue light and rushed forward. Through the countless tentacles, it crashed into the 30 meters tall human figure. As the 3D talisman crashed into it, the expression on the human figure's face changed slightly. Countless rays of light flashed across its eyes. In the blink of an eye, it seemed to become more agile and alive. I see. A thought rushed out of the 30 meters tall human figure, which was easily sensed by Luo Fan. Then, the 30 meters tall human figure trembled slightly. An endless blue light flickered continuously. Then, an endless amount of water essence rushed out from the strange current below, crossing the void and directly fusing into the human figure. This water essence was very pure. It contained 9 special types of water essence. They interweaved in a very complicated and mysterious way to form an almost inseparable whole. It contained some kind of strange power. As the water element essence surged into the human figure, the blue light that flickered on it became even more intense and dazzling. There were even specks of light that flickered like stars in the endless starry sky. After this change, the 30 meters tall human figure quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, it shrank from 30 meters tall to less than 10 meters tall. There was also a slight change in its appearance. It gradually became somewhat different from Luo Fan. Although it still looked very similar to Luo Fan at first glance, there were many other characteristics that made it obvious that this person was not Luo Fan. After the figure stabilized, the light slowly receded and said, "This is the feeling of a body. It is indeed wonderful." His voice was very deep, but it was also dry because he had not spoken for a long time. Is this the feeling of speaking? As he spoke, he opened his mouth again. There was a faint joy in his voice. How do you feel, friend? Are you satisfied? Luo Fan smiled. Thank you. May I know your name? The person took a step forward and arrived in front of Luo Fan. He bowed slightly. This action was a little dry and awkward. It was obvious that it was the first time he had done this. I am Luo Fan. May I know your name? Luo Fan smiled. Luo Fan. I don't seem to have a name, but I also seem to have. When the person heard Luo Fan's words, he frowned, as if he had encountered a very difficult matter. It seems that you did not receive much of Pangu's Yuan spirit's inheritance, which is why you have such a vague feeling. However, there is no harm in this. As long as you receive the inheritance of Pangu's Yuan spirit, no matter how little, you will definitely have your own name. As long as you think about it carefully, you will definitely know. Luo Fan smiled. Pangu's Yuan spirit. Pangu's Yuan spirit. When the person heard Luo Fan's words, doubt appeared in his eyes. He murmured and fell into deep thought. He was trying his best to think about his own name. Luo Fan floated at the bottom of the sea, quietly watching the man in front of him pondering. He didn't show the slightest bit of impatience. The man pondered for 3 days and 3 nights. After 3 days and 3 nights, the man's eyes suddenly lit up. He exclaimed, "I understand now. I am Hai Ling, the spirit of the East Sea." As he said this, the sea within 1,000,000 miles violently surged. The current network below also underwent a strange change at this moment. The countless specks of light in the current rapidly flickered. An incomparably mysterious and profound aura emerged from the endless flashing fluorescent light. The vast simulated starry sky with a radius of 1,000,000 miles became even more complicated, becoming more like a real starry sky. At the same time, the eyes of Hai Ling, who had formed his body with the help of Luo Fan's shuttle-shaped 3D talisman, shone brightly. A mysterious aura spread from his body. In the blink of an eye, Luo Fan even felt that the seawater around his body was under his control. He felt that there was a very faint but real repulsive force that appeared out of thin air and acted on his body, as if it wanted to expel him from the sea. Luo Fan was not surprised by this. With a slight thought, his body seemed to have disappeared. Although he was still there, the repulsive force seemed to be unable to find target. It gradually subsided and disappeared. The changes to the man's body lasted for several hours before gradually subsiding. After that, the light in Hai Ling's eyes became extremely spirited. He was no different from an ordinary innate god. His aura had completely fused with the surrounding sea, forming an incredible change. Luo Fan faintly smiled, a faint expression appearing on his face as he said, "Congratulations, fellow Taoist. To be able to comprehend the origin, you must be able to perfectly use your innate divine ability. I have to thank you for enlightening me. Without you, it would have taken me hundreds of thousands of years to comprehend my own essence." Hai Ling sighed. Just as Luo Fan had said, after learning his own name and nature, Hai Ling was already very different from before. Not only had his spiritual sense become more complete, but he had also completely assimilated the inheritance he had obtained from Pangu's origin spirit. He could even control his innate abilities perfectly. If it wasn't for the fact that Hai Ling had received very little inheritance from Pangu's origin spirit, only some words, language, and general knowledge, he would not be able to use Pangu's origin spirit to comprehend his own cultivation method. With his mysterious body, he would at least be able to cultivate to the level of an itinerant immortal. If he took a step further, he might even reach the level of a true immortal. The amount of water essence contained within the ocean current network that spanned nearly 1,000,000 miles had reached a level that even Luo Fan could not help but be moved. The sturdiness of this foundation could be said to be quite shocking. If it was converted into cultivation, one could imagine how great the improvement would be. "Fellow, you're exaggerating. But since you've comprehended the origin, do you have any plans for the future?" Luo Fan smiled. "I'm a bit at a loss right now. But since you've come all the way here to find me, you must have something for me to do. Why don't you tell me?" Hai Ling's behavior was completely unlike an innate god who had just been enlightened. He seemed especially mature and clear-headed. Seeing this, Luo Fan was even more satisfied. He said, "Since you've already seen through it, I won't hide it anymore. I'll tell you directly. Fellow Taoist, please speak." Hai Ling's expression was very sincere. Luo Fan nodded. Then, he explained to Hai Ling about the calamity of the world that would happen thousands of years later. Then, he talked about why he had come to the boundless sea outside the untainted land. Luo Fan did not hide anything in his narration, nor did he exaggerate anything. But Hai Ling's expression kept changing as he listened. After all, he had received the inheritance from Pangu's origin spirit. Although he had only inherited some general knowledge and language, he could still understand the severity of the situation through the changes. Therefore, when he heard about the great trial of heaven and earth, he felt an extremely strong sense of danger rise in his mind. This strong sense of danger made him instantly know that what Luo Fan said was true. Moreover, the calamity of the world might affect him. With this feeling, after Luo Fan finished speaking, he directly said to Luo Fan, "I already understand this matter. Taoist brother, if you have any instructions, please speak directly. I, Hai Ling, am willing to die 10,000 deaths for you." Luo Fan waved his hand and said, "Fellow, you don't have to worry. We hundreds of thousands of innate gods have been preparing for this calamity for tens of thousands of years. At this time, the untainted land is already prepared. It should not be a problem for us to pass through this calamity. It's just that the boundless sea is too vast, and because Fan is too unfamiliar with the boundless sea, I need to come here to find Fellow to deal with the calamity together. So, Fellow, you don't have to worry too much. You just need to be able to guard a part of the sea when the calamity arrives. Even so, the calamity this time has affected so many areas. If I can't help the calamity, how can I be at ease?" Hai Ling sighed. Luo Fan smiled and said, "Fellow, why do you need to belittle yourself? With fellow Taoists' innate abilities, you are already able to guard an area of 500,000 kilometers. Now that you've understood the source, your abilities should be at least 10,000 times more powerful. Guarding an area of 50 billion kilometers shouldn't be a problem. If you continue to cultivate, guarding a larger area will not be difficult. Even 100 billion miles is only a small part of the boundless sea. It is still not enough. I need to cultivate hard to be able to guard the sea. It's just that I only cultivate. After all, I only learned it on my own. It's extremely rough and can't improve my abilities much. I hope Fellow can guide me." Hai Ling said to Luo Fan. As he spoke, he bowed respectfully, appearing exceptionally sincere. Seeing that Hai Ling was so self-aware, Luo Fan thought even more highly of him. He smiled and said, "Since Fellow has already spoken, Fan naturally doesn't dare to disobey. I have a technique called the Stars Tao Attainment Technique. It is created by simulating the laws of the sun, moon, and stars in the endless starry sky. Although there will definitely be some omissions, it is also created from my careful understanding of the endless starry sky. I hope it will be of use to Fellow." As he spoke, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. A speck of light rushed out from his hand, turning into a long river of stars that rushed straight towards the sea mausoleum. Looking at this momentum, it was as if the endless stars in the sky had condensed into one, bringing with it an endless momentum as it rushed towards the sea mausoleum. The moment the river of stars appeared, Hai Ling's eyes were blank. It was because of the appearance of this river of stars that he had comprehended the endless starry sky for hundreds of thousands of years. He fell into the deepest state of comprehension. Just as his eyes were blank, the river of stars was like 100 rivers flowing into the sea, instantly rushing into the space between Hai Ling's eyebrows. In the blink of an eye, it was completely submerged. As the river of stars entered, the sea mausoleum's body instantly collapsed, turning into endless threads that spread in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it came to a range of 1,000,000 miles, directly enveloping the strange sea current network below. The moment Hai Ling's body collapsed and spread, the endless water yuan essence in the surroundings began to surge violently, as if it had been detonated. The power produced by the surging water yuan essence was extremely powerful, causing the originally calm sea surface to surge again. But this time, it didn't form a huge whirlpool. Instead, it was as if some kind of huge explosion had occurred at the bottom of the sea, instantly tearing the sea surface apart. Moreover, this tear continued to spread in all directions. It was as if some kind of incomparably huge object had rushed out from the bottom of the sea, causing the surrounding water to spread in all directions. The scene was quite shocking. Such a violent sea current surged, but it didn't affect Luo Fan at all. He floated at the bottom of the sea, quietly waiting. The water yuan essence continued to wreak havoc around him, as if he was in a completely different space. Even his clothes weren't affected in the slightest, and even his hair didn't change in the slightest because of the surging water yuan essence. The endless threads that exploded covered an area of nearly 1 million miles, completely enveloping the strange sea current of the sea mausoleum's main body and rapidly seeping into it. As these strange threads seeped in, the endless specks of blue light in the strange sea current began to give birth to incomparably mysterious changes. It was as if countless small hands were grabbing these specks of blue light and moving them bit by bit. The endless specks of blue light began to constantly shift positions during this process, moving from their originally quite mysterious positions to even more mysterious positions that contained even more mysteries of the stars. This entire process was as if an incredible existence like Pangu was rehearsing the operating rules of the endless stars in the endless starry sky. An incomparably mysterious, profound, and complex mysteries of the heavenly Tao and the ultimate truths of the stars constantly emerged. As these changes occurred, the strange sea current network began to rapidly expand like a balloon. Chapter 384. Sea currents take form. Hope finally. The sea currents finally stopped spreading and stabilized after expanding to a radius of 30 million miles. Within the strange sea current network with a radius of 30 million miles, blue fluorescent dots were arranged like stars, constantly flowing in a mysterious way. Luo Fan, in the range of the sea currents, suddenly felt as if he had come to an endless starry sky. Within the blue fluorescent dots, there were even wisps of star essence faintly seeping out. Under the effect of the sea current network, the sea within a radius of 30 million miles seemed to have undergone earth-shaking changes. The surrounding endless water essence seemed to have been combed by an extremely mysterious force, so that the water essence within a radius of 30 million miles combined to form a feeling that was completely different from a seawater. Instead, it was similar to the void, making Luo Fan feel as if he was in an endless starry sky. Sure enough, just as I expected, he can expand his body to a radius of 30 million miles just by comprehending the stars achieving the Tao technique. It seems that it is a simple matter to make him guard a radius of 100 billion miles. Maybe when the Great Tribulation comes, it is possible to guard 1 trillion miles. With the help of the Underworld Network, he may eventually be able to guard the entire East Sea. Luo Fan's mind flashed with a hint of admiration. Hailing's performance had exceeded his imagination. He originally thought that Hailing's performance in this sea area would surpass that of an ordinary innate god, but he did not expect that Hailing would have such a strong integration with the boundless sea. Naturally, he was overjoyed. The coverage of the sea current network increased to a radius of 30 million miles. Although it had reached its limit, it did not continue to grow. But the sea area affected by the sea current network was still spreading outwards. The endless water elemental essence in the ocean was like fuel, and the changes were like flames. When the two came into contact, they began to spread out endlessly, affecting a wider and wider area of the ocean, causing the wider and wider area of the ocean to undergo wondrous changes. It looked like the void was constantly expanding, and the sea was constantly changing. After 9 days and 9 nights, only then did the changes stop. At this moment, although the current network still covered a radius of 30 million kilometers, the sea affected by the current network, which was the boundless water essence that had undergone some mysterious transformation, had already spread to a radius of 1 billion kilometers. Apart from Luo Fan, who had cultivated the true eyes of sun and moon, even an innate god in the golden immortal realm might not be able to see the end of this vast and boundless area. The changes in the sea continued to spread from the depth of 10,000 kilometers to both sides. Under the influence of this, the seawater that was thousands of kilometers deep above them was like a void. Luo Fan raised his head and looked up. It was as if he was standing in the void. There was no obstruction at all. He could see the astral wind, lightning, and fire 45,000 miles above. The obstruction of the sea and the surface of the sea did not seem to exist. And under the current network, the seawater also underwent a strange change. Under this mysterious transformation, the seawater that was tens of thousands of kilometers deep below also became like a void. At a glance, one could only see the endless bottom of the sea, forming mountains, undulating high and low. Among them, there were also strange materials that flickered with a faint light. The essence of the five elements acted as the light source, and the sand contained endless mysterious things that had been refined over a long period of time. All these things were imprinted into Luo Fan's eyes without any obstruction. The sea area within 1 billion kilometers seemed to have become a void of 1 billion kilometers. From where Luo Fan stood, it seemed as if a deep pit with a radius of 1 billion kilometers had suddenly appeared here. This pit was 70 to 80,000 kilometers deep, and it was extremely mysterious. With a thought, Luo Fan took a step forward. His figure instantly turned, and he directly stepped out of the seawater. In the blink of an eye, he had crossed tens of thousands of kilometers and arrived above the sea surface, floating in the air at a height of 1,000 feet above the sea. Looking down, the seawater was still the same as before, and there did not seem to be any difference. There were no changes to the surrounding void of the seawater at all. Seeing this, he could not help but smile and nod inwardly. That's right. If I could see the changes of the sea area within 1 billion kilometers from above, it would be too ostentatious and would not be able to control the sea area at all. Such a thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With such a thought, Luo Fan raised his hand and waved. Endless water vapor quickly condensed towards him, and in the blink of an eye, it condensed into a white cloud that was 30 feet wide below him. After the cloud appeared, he directly sat down cross-legged and quietly waited. Although the changes below had already calmed down, that only meant that the transformation of the Highling's power had stopped. It did not mean that the Highling's cultivation had ended. This stomp lasted for 3 months. During these 3 months, the sea within a 1 billion kilometer radius was extremely calm. It was even calmer than the sea beyond the 1 billion kilometer radius. However, Luo Fan's true eyes of sun and moon could easily see through the endless seawater, and he could see the changes of the strange currents at the bottom of the sea. Over these 3 months, the strange currents still did not continue to grow, but the blue lights that constantly flashed within them flowed faster and faster, becoming more and more mysterious. During this process, the endless water essence gradually flowed and transformed. On this day, after 3 months, it gradually condensed into a huge human figure that was tens of thousands of feet tall, right below where Luo Fan was. The huge human figure was lying flat on the surface of the strange sea current. The endless specks of blue fluorescent light in the ocean current circulated as if they were revolving around this huge human figure, forming a very vague, obscure, but incredibly mysterious vortex in the ocean current network. This human figure composed of water essence was constantly being enriched in this process. There were even strands of tough lines outlining the internal organs, muscles, and bones of this human figure. This human figure became more and more complete, more and more like a real life. On this day, it happened to be exactly 3 months since Hai Ling practiced the stars achieving the Tao technique. This 10,000 feet tall human figure was completely no different from a real life. Every line of his muscles, every strand of his hair, and every internal organ in his body seemed real, as if he had been born with them. There was not the slightest bit of illusion. To be able to combine the materialization method with the stars achieving the Tao technique, to form such an outer body incarnation, his aptitude is not bad. Luo Fan smiled slightly, and such a thought flashed in his mind. Compared to the human form that Hai Ling had formed at the beginning, there was an essential difference. The previous human figure that used Luo Fan's shuttle-shaped three-dimensional talisman as a support was just a form of magical power. It was no different from any kind of dead object in Luo Fan's hand. The only difference was that it could express Hai Ling's thoughts through various movements and sounds. But now this human figure was already a living thing. It was an outer body incarnation of Hai Ling, or, from another point of view, it was Hai Ling. Although it was somewhat similar to the previous dead objects, its essence was completely different. Just as Luo Fan was secretly evaluating Hai Ling, the fluorescent light in the strange currents began to change violently. The huge whirlpool that was faintly formed in the currents began to gradually disperse, and the endless fluorescent light began to gradually disperse in the process, slowly moving back to its original position. And in the process, it gradually disappeared. In the end, it completely disappeared without a trace. The complete disappearance of this fluorescent light also caused the strange currents to disappear completely. Except for Luo Fan's sun and moon true pupils and the various special spiritual eyes that other innate gods could use, it was difficult for other creatures to see the existence of this strange currents. At this moment, after the fluorescent light completely disappeared, the 10,000 feet tall human figure slowly opened its eyes and slowly sat up. It turned its head and looked around, and its face showed an expression that seemed to be both happy and sad. Finally, it slowly sat up and looked up at the void above. Its gaze passed through tens of thousands of miles and saw Luo Fan above the sea. After seeing Luo Fan, the towering giant stood up and strode forward. His figure was very elegant, and he easily crossed the tens of thousands of miles of sea and stood directly on the surface of the sea. The magic cloud that Luo Fan sat on was only 1,000 feet above the sea. The giant stood on the sea, and its head was tens of thousands of feet above the sea, but it could only see Luo Fan from above. Seeing this, the giant's body shook slightly and shrank at a very fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it had shrunk to less than 10 feet. Looking at its appearance, it was not much different from the body that was formed in the beginning, but it was more agile and natural. Thank you for your generous gift, Tao Brother. With this technique, all of Hai Ling's achievements in the future will be given to me by Tao Brother. The person lightly stepped forward and arrived in front of Luo Fan, who was 1,000 feet above the sea, and bowed to Luo Fan. Luo Fan stood up and said, "Tao Brother, don't worry about it. This is nothing." Hai Ling bowed again and said, "Fellow Taoist, slight help is a great kindness to me. How could I not care?" Luo Fan smiled and helped Hai Ling up. "Tao Brother, you really don't need to worry about it. Although I did help with this, I still need Tao Brother's efforts. If Tao Brother wants to thank me, then cultivate well and strive to travel to a wider sea before the great calamity comes. Hai Ling will not fail you," Hai Ling said seriously. "Then I can rest assured. I see that Tao Brother seems to have some difficulties in operating the technique. I don't know if you have any doubts. You can tell me now, and I may be able to solve them for you," Luo Fan said with a smile. "I don't know what to say." Hai Ling's eyes lit up. Luo Fan nodded. He had waited here for such a long time. In addition to seeing the effect of Hai Ling's cultivation of the stars achieving Tao technique, he also wanted to explain Hai Ling's problems. If it were other innate gods, or at other times, Luo Fan naturally would not be so kind. After teaching him the technique, he would probably leave directly. After all, no matter how little the other innate gods had inherited from Pangu's primordial spirit, they would generally have more than Hai Ling. At least they could understand some rough and shallow cultivation methods. With such a foundation, after teaching him the technique, Hai Ling would naturally be able to comprehend it by combining what he had gained in the past and slowly understand the mystery of the technique. Naturally, he would not need Luo Fan's guidance. If it were at other times, without the arrival of the great calamity of heaven and earth after thousands of years, Hai Ling would naturally be able to understand the technique bit by bit with the help of his observation of the nature of heaven and earth. Although it would take a lot more time, he would be able to fully understand it one day, and naturally did not need Luo Fan's guidance. Hai Ling's foundation was too poor, and time was tight. In the previous cultivation, he naturally accumulated countless doubts and puzzles. At this time, hearing Luo Fan's words, he was overjoyed and quickly asked Luo Fan for advice on all kinds of problems he had encountered in the past few months of cultivation. Since Luo Fan had decided to guide Hai Ling well, he naturally would not hide too much. As for the questions Hai Ling asked, he casually pointed them out and analyzed them one by one, which made Hai Ling feel quite enlightened. He felt that all kinds of problems he had encountered in the past suddenly became clear, and his understanding of the stars achieving the Tao cultivation technique reached a whole new level. It took Hai Ling 3 months to master the stars achieving the Tao cultivation technique. Luo Fan spent a full half a year to solve all kinds of problems Hai Ling had encountered in the past 3 months, which was twice as long as his cultivation time. Of course, most of the problems were not about the stars achieving the Tao cultivation technique. Although that technique was mysterious and complicated, it was only a technique after all. According to the speed at which Hai Ling could completely transform his body in 3 months, although there were many problems he encountered, there would not be so many that he needed 6 months to completely solve them. The reason why it took such a long time was that during the process, Luo Fan instilled a lot of common knowledge and principles of cultivation in a Hai Ling bit by bit, supplementing Hai Ling's foundation, so that he could cultivate faster and understand faster after he left. In the end, he could make faster progress. After solving Hai Ling's problems for half a year, Hai Ling had almost been reborn. The divine light in his eyes was a little more profound, as if he had seen through many mysterious mysteries. It has been half a year. I think you have no more doubts. I'm going to leave. Luo Fan looked at Hai Ling and said with a smile. Just as Luo Fan opened his mouth, the sea in a radius of 1 billion miles below slightly shook, and then violent waves surged. It looked like the mood of the whole sea was violently shaken. In front of Luo Fan, Hai Ling's external incarnation changed his expression slightly. After a while, he said with some reluctance, "Thank you for your help these days. Hai Ling will never forget your great kindness to me." "Ha! It's just a small matter. That's all. I hope you can focus on your cultivation in the future. Fan, farewell." Luo Fan smiled. Hai Ling's eyes were filled with reluctance and gratitude. He bowed and said, "Farewell, brother." Luo Fan nodded at Hai Ling. His figure flashed and turned into a long rainbow, charging into the distance. In the blink of an eye, he had disappeared from Hai Ling's sight. As he disappeared, the auspicious cloud beneath him shook slightly and turned into endless water vapor. It scattered in all directions and disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye. Looking at Luo Fan's disappearing figure, Hai Ling was stunned for a long time. After a quarter of an hour, he let out a long breath. His eyes were filled with determination. There are still a few thousand years. I must control the sea within 1 trillion miles before the great calamity. Otherwise, I will be ashamed of brother's great kindness. With that, he turned around and took a step forward, arriving directly on the surface of the sea. With another step, his figure blurred. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived at the bottom of the sea, thousands of miles deep above the strange current. During this process, Hai Ling's body swelled slightly and became tens of thousands of feet in size. His current position was right above the center of this strange network of currents. The endless currents around him had a strange interweaving point in this position, as if this point connected all the currents. Hai Ling's eyes flashed. He sat down cross-legged at the interweaving point, then closed his eyes. His breathing changed slightly and gradually became extremely even. As he closed his eyes and his breathing became even, the strange current that occupied a radius of 30 million miles below him began to emit specks of blue fluorescence. When the blue fluorescence appeared, the water essence within a radius of 1 billion miles seemed to have been combed by the strange power and turned into a void. As if it had a backbone, a strange and obscure change occurred. After listening to Luo Fan's explanation for more than half a year, Hai Ling's understanding of the stars achieving the Tao technique had greatly improved compared to half a year ago. His understanding of this technique had also deepened to a level that he couldn't reach half a year ago. The limit that he thought half a year ago was no longer the limit in his view. The changes that he took for granted half a year ago were no longer a matter of course at this time. When the infinite blue fluorescence lit up, Hai Ling's spiritual awareness had returned to his body, which was a strange current that occupied a radius of 30 million miles. With a slight operation of the stars achieving the Tao technique, endless water essence swarmed in from all directions and poured into the strange current network. The current network did not continue to expand during this process. Instead, it was constantly strengthening. Chapter 385. Panga's descendants, extraterrestrial life forms. After Luo Fan left the sea mausoleum, he did not stop. He went to a place that was 13 trillion kilometers away from the sea mausoleum. With the help of the special effect of the Netherworld network, his speed was extremely fast. In just a short while, he had traveled 13 trillion kilometers. However, although the Netherworld network existed in the East Sea, it was very sparse and could not be compared to the Primordial world. Therefore, he could only reach most of the places in the ocean with the help of the Netherworld network. Other than the area covered by the Netherworld network, there was still a small area that he could not reach easily. He had to use his own strength to walk. Next should be the biggest challenge this time. Luo Fan's figure stopped in this position, and such a thought flashed in his mind. This place was already a few trillion kilometers away from the Primordial world, at such a long distance. Even if Luo Fan used the true eyes of sun and moon, he could only faintly see the shadow of the Primordial world. Without the true eyes of sun and moon, he could not see any land in all directions. As far as his eyes could see, there was an endless ocean around him. The waves surged in the magnificent scene. Even Luo Fan felt his mind being cleansed by the endless wonders of the world. He felt much more broadened. The scenery here is very different from what I saw on the Buzhou mountain, but it is equally shocking. Coming to the Primordial world is a great opportunity for me. Although there are many regrets left in my previous life, there are more benefits. If I did not come to the Primordial world, how could I see such a magnificent scene? How could he have cultivated to such a powerful physical strength? If I did not come to the Primordial world, I'm afraid I would still be working hard for 3 meals a day. Luo Fan suddenly felt emotional and could not help but recall his previous life. However, his Tao heart was firm after all, and it was tenacious to the point of being unshakable. This thought of recalling the past reverberated within his mind, yet it was unable to affect his Tao heart in the slightest, nor did it affect his pursuits in this lifetime. He sighed slightly. He took a step forward and headed towards a place that wasn't covered by the Yellow Springs network more than 300 million miles away. The reason why he wanted to refine the Xuanji boy and add it to the Dharma treasure was because of that position. With Luo Fan's speed, a distance of hundreds of millions of miles was nothing at all. As he strode forward, his figure had already turned into a ray of light that tore through space. In just a short moment, he had already traversed over 300 million kilometers and arrived at a location that made him feel slightly troubled. The moment he arrived at this location, from the bottom of the sea, a beam of golden light rushed up from below, and with an unimaginable speed, it fiercely collided with the rainbow that Luo Fan had transformed into. The speed of the golden light even surpassed that of the rainbow. By the time Luo Fan sensed the appearance of the golden light, it had already arrived in front of the rainbow and crashed into it, intending to shred Luo Fan, who had already turned into a rainbow. Luo Fan had already expected this. With a thought, as the void changed, a mysterious power appeared out of thin air and acted on the golden light. This mysterious power was extremely powerful and had reached the peak of the golden immortal realm. It was so powerful that even the innate gods in the space-time illusion could not withstand it. Even Taoist Tenmu would definitely collapse under this power. Although the speed of the golden light was extremely fast, it was after all only a golden light. Under the effect of this mysterious power, the golden light instantly froze in the void. It directly transformed into its original form. It was a golden needle that was dozens of feet long and the size of a thumb. This golden needle was a mystical, magical item. However, it was different from the magic weapon that Luo Fan had refined. Instead, it was a strange weapon that was made by compressing infinite precious materials and turning them into infinite evil and water essence. There were no restrictions in it, but its mysteriousness was not weaker than that of the restriction magic weapon that Luo Fan had refined. It even contained some kind of origin that did not exist in the primordial world. It contained a mysterious truth that was completely different from the memory that Luo Fan had obtained from Pangu's primordial spirit. After the golden needle froze, Luo Fan's figure condensed and changed from a rainbow state to a human form, floating in the void. The golden and silver light in his eyes flickered slightly, and he tried his best to see through the golden needle. Unfortunately, it was not Luo Fan's real body that was here, but only a magic weapon. Although this magic weapon could withstand the power of the true eyes of the sun and moon brought by Luo Fans while after becoming a magic weapon, it did not have the true eyes of the sun and moon after all. The power that could see through the origin in the eyes was not too strong. It was not difficult for such a weak power to see through all kinds of mysterious things. For example, the sea mausoleum, the nether spirit, and the double-headed tiger-headed flood dragon before the sea mausoleum were like this. However, this kind of source energy that wasn't very strong was not enough for the golden needle. Within the true eyes of sun and moon, the golden needle continued to enlarge and penetrate deeper. Within it, there were strands of strange lines that formed a three-dimensional pattern that was extremely natural. There were no signs that it was man-made, but it contained incredible power. At the center of the golden needle, there was a faint gray existence. This gray existence was extremely mysterious, and it directly blocked the power of the true eyes of the sun and moon from Luo Fan, making it impossible for him to see through all the mysteries of the golden needle through the gray existence. Luo Fan tried hard for a long time, but he could not produce any results. Helpless, he raised his hand and waved. The mysterious force acted on the golden needle, moving it towards him. The golden needle seemed to have lost its strength. Under the mysterious force, it slowly moved towards Luo Fan. Just as it was less than 3 inches away from Luo Fan's palm, the golden needle suddenly moved like a dragon that had just woken up. This golden needle was like a giant dragon that had just woken up. Under the true eyes of sun and moon, the countless lines that seemed to have formed naturally within the golden needle, without any trace of human intervention, instantly turned. This turn was like the endless stars in the endless starry sky revolving in a circle. It exuded a feeling that contained the endless mysteries of the world. There was also an incomparably terrifying force that directly broke free from the mysterious force that Luo Fan had casually sent out. The gray existence at the center of the golden needle completely connected with the three-dimensional pattern during this process. It produced some kind of incomparably mysterious change, causing the golden needle to swell and turn into a strange life form that was 30 feet tall. This life form was roughly humanoid, but it had 8 arms and 3 legs. Although it only had 1 head, it had 2 faces in the front and the back. These 2 faces were both human faces. One face was kind, and the other face was ferocious. At this moment, the face that was facing Luo Fan was the ferocious face. After this strange life form appeared, its 8 arms each formed a strange hand seal. With the endless power of the world, it fiercely attacked Luo Fan from all directions. The wind howled, and there were endless thunderclaps in the void. This place was outside the untainted land in the East Sea. The space here was slightly weaker than the space above the untainted land. This kind of weakness was not something else, but the mysterious rules that could not be broken if one could not comprehend the mysteries hidden in the space had already slightly loosened. And it was this slight loosening that caused an extremely obvious change at this moment. In front of these 8 arms, because of the strong force, the void actually distorted slightly. In this distortion, although the void did not break, this was the untainted land. The degree of stability of the void was unimaginable. Such a stable void actually distorted at this moment. The shock it brought to people was naturally even more intense. Luo Fan looked at the 8 arms that were less than a foot away from him in the blink of an eye, but there was not a trace of nervousness in his heart. "I've been waiting for you for a long time," Luo Fan said lightly. With a slight thought, endless changes occurred in the void. Between heaven and earth, countless strange threads appeared out of thin air and entangled the strange life form in front of him. In an instant, they were like countless ropes and chains, tightly locking down the 8 arms, 3 legs, and 2 faces of the strange creature's head, commanding the heavens and the earth with his words. Such mysterious might wasn't just for show. Although this place was outside the untainted land, and the mysteries hidden in the void were not as mysterious as the void above the untainted land, it still belonged to the untainted land after all. Even golden immortals could not fully comprehend the mysteries hidden in the void. Under Luo Fan's words of law, the mysteries hidden in the void naturally produced incredible power. The endless threads turned into chains and locked the strange life form in front of him. Disperse. After locking the strange life form, Luo Fan did not do anything. He directly spat out this Panga character. Although the word came out of his mouth, it was like a clap of thunder that surrounded the void within a 10,000-mile radius. A rumbling sound was produced in the void, as if the heavens and earth were roaring and the void was trembling. With this sound, the 8 arms that were forming various hand seals and were about to bombard Luo Fan instantly collapsed and turned into endless golden fog. This collapse continued to spread, and in the blink of an eye, it had spread to every part of the strange life form's body. The whole strange life form disappeared completely and was replaced by a golden fog. Condense. Luo Fan spat out another word. With this word, the golden fog that had originally dispersed shrank and condensed rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it condensed into a finger in front of Luo Fan. This finger looked like a middle finger that had been broken at the base. The whole finger was 3 feet long. It was not much compared to the original body of the innate god that Luo Fan had seen before, but it was still quite shocking. "Ah, I understand you were very annoying." A voice full of shock and anger came into Luo Fan's ears out of nowhere. This voice was a language, a very complete and very complicated language, but it was definitely not the Panga character language. It was the first time that Luo Fan had heard this language, but he felt a very familiar feeling emerging from his mind. This familiar feeling made Luo Fan instantly understand that the life form that spoke this language was definitely not a natural life form in the untainted world. Instead, it was a life form that directly entered the untainted world from the chaos when Pangu created the world. With Luo Fan's control of his divine soul, mind, and memory, he naturally knew that this familiar feeling was left to him by Pangu's original spirit when it dissipated. The familiar feeling left by Pangu's original spirit must be something that Pangu was familiar with. Naturally, it could only be something that Pangu had come into contact with before the creation of the world. Although Luo Fan had never heard of this language, at his current realm, he could even command heaven and earth. It was very easy for him to analyze the meaning contained in this extremely strange language. Panga's descendants. How dare you touch my celestial device? Let go of it and come down to beg for forgiveness. This was the meaning contained in the language. Luo Fan analyzed this meaning and frowned. It was the first time that he had heard such rude and arrogant words since he came to the untainted world. It was the second time that Luo Fan had heard such a title for the Panga's descendants. The first time he heard such a title was when he was seeking the Earth Immortal's Tao fruit to pass the heavenly tribulation from the great freedom Devil Lord. And the second time was now. In the past, Luo Fan did not think too much about the title of the Panga's descendants. He only thought that it was the title that the living beings in the untainted world used to call the living beings in the untainted world. But at this moment, when he heard this title from the living beings that Pangu had once come into contact with, he felt that there seemed to be some fog in it. It did not seem to be that simple. However, there was no need to think about this at the moment. A thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind, and he shouted, "Stop acting mysterious. Come out." As he shouted, a mysterious and inexplicable change occurred in the void. Amidst the change, the surface of the sea within a radius of 10,000 kilometers below Luo Fan suddenly grew larger and larger. The vortex became more and more obvious. After the vortex was formed, An increasingly intense golden light suddenly rushed out of the vortex. The golden light was 1,000 feet in diameter, and it rushed out of the bottom of the sea. Like a golden pillar, it rushed into the sky and began to connect the sky and the earth from the center of the vortex. It pierced straight into the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer above, opening the layers of barriers. It directly passed through the 9 layers of the astral wind, lightning, and fire layer, and came to the barrier between the 9th layer and the endless starry sky. Only then did it stop rushing up. A cry of surprise came from the pillar of light. I have the ability to command the world, and my words are the law. If it was the innate gods, this effect might not be too great. You are a living being from the untainted world, and you are naturally rejected by the untainted world. This ability to command the world is the most effective for you. Luo Fan looked at the golden light, and his eyes flickered with gold and silver light. He raised his hand and gently grabbed the air in front of him. The golden finger in front of him quickly compressed. In the blink of an eye, it had already compressed into the appearance of an ordinary finger and landed in his hand. The finger was extremely heavy, almost hundreds of millions of kilograms. If not for the fact that Luo Fan's cultivation realm was unfathomable and his power was earth-shattering, he might not have been able to pick up this finger. It seems that you've spent endless time and collected endless materials to refine this Dharma artifact. Luo Fan looked at the finger and said calmly. He did not change his language, nor did he add any thoughts to it. However, he believed that the life in the golden light that had rushed out of the bottom of the sea because of his words would definitely be able to understand what he was saying. This finger-like Dharma artifact was rather mysterious. Its power was also extremely impressive. It also contained many materials that did not exist in the primordial world and belonged to the people in the outer realm. If he studied it carefully, he would definitely be able to use it to understand some of the mysteries of the outer realm of the primordial world. To Luo Fan, it was rather precious. Therefore, after looking at it, Luo Fan did not stop. He raised his hand and slapped the golden finger. As he slapped it, countless three-dimensional talismans appeared on the surface of the golden finger. These three-dimensional talismans intertwined and combined with each other, forming an incomparably profound sealing array that firmly wrapped around the finger. After that, he flicked his left sleeve slightly, and the heavily sealed finger directly entered his sleeve universe. It replenished some of the inventory in his sleeve universe, which was already much emptier. Damn you, Bone Ash level! A strange roar came from the golden light. Luo Fan instantly analyzed the thoughts contained in the roar. Panga's descendants, how dare you take my treasure? With these words, an incomparably terrifying force suddenly erupted from the golden light. The strength of this force had reached an unimaginable level. In the face of this power, the golden light that had shot out from an unknown depth of the sea instantly distorted and shook violently. The distortion lasted for a few breaths, and then it suddenly collapsed. As the light pillar collapsed, it turned into countless specks of golden light that scattered in all directions. Like a hurricane, it covered a radius of 10,000 miles. Within this radius, the void was completely enveloped by the specks of golden light. The boundless golden light brought with it an incomparably terrifying force, stirring up the boundless innate yuan qi and stirring up the seawater below. It was as if the seawater was being stirred by a giant hand, and with the position of the pillar of light as the center, it began to surge in all directions. When the golden light spread to a radius of 10,000 miles, a loud sound that seemed like the destruction of the world and the explosion of the void came from it. This sound was so strong and mysterious. As if it was real, it brought another wave of impact, wrapping Luo Fan, who was extremely far away from the light pillar in this impact. From all directions, it crazily pressed towards Luo Fan's position, as if it wanted to directly crush Luo Fan into pieces and turn him into powder. During this process, the appearance of a strange golden life form gradually appeared in the pillar of light. Chapter 386. Chapter 426. Introduction. The great world of Jiuli, the giant being, exuded an aura like that of the scorching sun. Under the influence of its aura, waves of yuan qi rippled out from its body in all directions. Although the appearance of this life form was extremely strange, it did not feel ugly at all. Although it was different from the innate Taoism aptitude, it contained another kind of mystery, as if it had also been tempered and adjusted for countless years. Every line on its body, every rise and fall of every muscle, contained some kind of principle that Luo Fan was completely unfamiliar with. Although Luo Fan felt that these principles were unfamiliar to him, they seemed to be as mysterious and profound as the various mysteries of the great Tao that he had comprehended in the past tens of thousands of years. At this moment, this life was facing Luo Fan with a ferocious expression on its face. As Luo Fan looked at the strange being, he became even more convinced of its origin. With a thought, he opened his mouth and said, "Freeze." As he said that, the void began to change in a mysterious and profound way. After this change, an incredible power acted on the strange being out of nowhere. This power was extremely obscure, extremely natural, and extremely powerful. When it acted on the strange being, it was as if the entire world and the void wanted to freeze it in place. The strange being's body was suddenly frozen by this power, and a look of shock and anger appeared on its face. It roared loudly. Dazzling golden light burst out of its 8 hands. This golden light was extremely pure and dazzling, and contained an incredible destructive power. The destructive power was so strong that it seemed to be comparable to the peak of the golden immortal realm. Even the void was slightly distorted under the effect of this strange golden light. Under such a mysterious golden light, the immobilizing power summoned by Luo Fan's absolute command was actually unable to immobilize this strange life form. Although the 8 arms of the strange being were a little difficult to move, they regained control of themselves and could move on their own. The 8 arms moved slightly in the void, and 8 extremely mysterious trajectories appeared out of nowhere. In the blink of an eye, the 8 arms formed 8 seals that contained endless mysteries. As these 8 hand seals were formed, at that moment, a dot of chaotic light lit up where the heart of the strange life form was, and the moment it lit up, it rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it had already expanded to a radius of 1,000 feet, forming a chaotic ball of light. The 8 arms were distributed in 8 directions of the ball of light, and the hand seals on the 8 palms changed slightly. In an instant, it was as if a new world had been created within the ball of chaotic light. The chaotic light suddenly exploded, and countless strange existences that were different from the chaotic light were born within the chaotic light. The entire process was extremely fast and intense. It was like the creation of the world, but it was different from the creation of the world that Luo Fan had seen in Pangu's soul. There was no clear and turbid separation, no clear and turbid qi rising and sinking, no yin and yang evolving, and no earth, water, fire, and wind. In an instant, 5 different colored lights appeared in the chaotic light. These 5 lights were yellow, blue, green, red, and white. Every single one of them was extremely pure and condensed, giving off a mysterious feeling like the inextinguishable natural spirit light. Moreover, every single one of them had a mysterious power that had nothing in common with the others. After these 5 rays of pure light appeared, they suddenly intertwined, and a small world appeared out of thin air within this chaotic light. When this world was first formed, it was only 1,000 feet in radius. There was only one continent in this small world, but it was like a prehistoric land with all kinds of terrains. Although it was devoid of any life force, it gave off a very mysterious sense of desolation, as if it was a real world. The 8 palms of the strange being were placed in 8 directions of this small world. The 8 complicated hand seals were like 8 pillars that supported the heavens. They were above the 8 directions of the small world, fixing it in place. They stabilized this small world. Ah! The strange being suddenly let out a loud roar. After this roar, the 8 hand seals changed again. The originally extremely profound hand seals turned into another hand seal that was completely different from the original, but was equally profound and inconceivable. As the hand seals changed, this small world with a circumference of 1,000 zhang rapidly expanded. In the blink of an eye, it expanded more than 1,000 times from the original 1,000 feet to more than 1,000,000 feet. Luo Fan's cultivation realm was extremely high. If he wanted to react, he could easily react. If he wanted to stop it, he had endless methods to do so. However, he only quietly floated in the air and looked at the strange being's actions with burning eyes. Part of this was because he didn't sense any danger, but more importantly, it was because he was very interested in the strange abilities that this strange life form used. Not changing from turbid and directly separating the 5 elements to construct the world. Although it is different from the structure of the prehistoric world, it is also extremely mysterious. It also contains another source of creation. Golden and silver light flashed in Luo Fan's eyes as such thoughts flashed across his mind. Through the true eyes of sun and moon, he was able to see the technique that this strange life form before him was using with extreme clarity. He was even able to see the sequence of the abilities that this life form was using. At this moment, this strange being was creating a small kiliacosm. It was an incomplete world, but it had already reached the level of a small kiliacosm. Moreover, the method it used to create a small kiliacosm was completely different from all the methods Luo Fan had learned in the past, and it was also different from the method Pangu used to create the world from Pangu's primordial spirit. However, this method was also extremely mysterious, containing the true origin of the world and the mysteries of the world. These hand seals were definitely not created from Pangu's primordial spirit. Luo Fan had completely confirmed the identity of the being in front of him. While he was watching the strange life form create a minor kiliacosm, the minor kiliacosm that was created began to expand. In the blink of an eye, it had expanded to where Luo Fan was floating. Luo Fan originally planned to dodge, but as soon as the thought flashed through his mind, he suppressed it. This small world was so interesting. How could observing it from the outside compare to experiencing the mysteries of this small world for himself? Therefore, he didn't pay any attention to it. He stopped his body in that position and let the expanding small world swallow his body. Cluck, cluck, cluck. The moment Luo Fan was swallowed by this small world, a voice filled with joy and pride came into Luo Fan's ears. That's all you've got. Die. Ha! This was what Luo Fan heard from the strange voice, and it was what the strange being wanted to express. The moment Luo Fan was swallowed into this small world, this sound was like the sound emitted by the void of the entire universe, surging into Luo Fan's ears. His mind was shaken. Luo Fan's Taoist heart was firm and unbreakable. He didn't care about this voice that seemed to be the entire world, and carefully experienced the mysteries of this small world that had just been created. As he entered this small world, he felt like he had arrived in another world. His connection with the untainted world seemed to be blocked by a barrier of indescribable thickness. He raised his head and looked around. This was a space with a circumference of 1,000,000 feet. The sky was 100,000 feet high, and there was endless golden light in the sky. Although the ground was only 1,000,000 feet wide, there were ups and downs, and there were countless terrains. When Luo Fan arrived here, he was like a giant that was tens of thousands of miles tall. Even though he was still nearly 1,000,000 feet away from the sky, he already felt like he was indomitable. The surrounding void was no longer filled with the endless connate essence chi, water essence chi, and chaotic essence chi in the untainted world. Instead, it was a kind of essence chi that was condensed from countless free energies among the primordial chi of heaven and earth. Most of it was similar to the primordial chi of the 5 elements of heaven and earth in the untainted land. Apart from the primordial chi of the 5 elements, billions of other primordial chi seemed to be derived from and transformed from the primordial chi of the five elements. With a thought, Luo Fan understood the mysteries of this small world. This small world was impressively made use of the very ordinary five elements essence chi in the untainted world as a fulcrum, turning the five elements essence chi into the source of all things in this small world. In this small world, the five elements essence chi was like the chaotic essence chi in the untainted world. It could transform into all kinds of essence chi and produce all kinds of matter in this world. In fact, if it evolved for a longer time, it could even transform into endless vitality and give birth to infinite life. Is this the five elements world? This thought flashed through Luo Fan's mind. At this moment, the spatial barrier of the entire small world suddenly strengthened rapidly. The connection between Luo Fan and the untainted world was greatly weakened during the strengthening of the spatial barrier. Luo Fan had the ability to command the untainted world in the untainted world. His words were powerful, and his connection with the untainted world was so close that it had long reached an unimaginable level. Although the strengthening of the spatial barrier had greatly weakened his connection with the untainted world, in the end, no matter how much it weakened, there was still a very obscure and weak connection between Luo Fan and the untainted world. No matter how strong the spatial barrier was, it could not be completely cut off. Die! A loud roar resounded like a clap of thunder. The entire small world was instantly enveloped by endless lightning. Bolts of lightning that could destroy heaven and earth appeared out of thin air in the endless golden light in the sky. They fell at an unimaginable speed and attacked Luo Fan. The language used in the thunderous shout was still very strange. But this time, Luo Fan did not need to analyze the thoughts in it. He easily understood the thoughts that the voice wanted to express. It was as if the voice was using the language of Pangu or other languages that Luo Fan knew. This voice was the voice of that strange life. And that strange life obviously could not know any of the languages that Luo Fan knew. Therefore, there was only one possibility. The rules of this small world had changed the rules of language. No language could be an obstacle to communication. This method can really be regarded as a clever idea, but it's a pity that the attack power is a little weak. Luo Fan smiled faintly when he heard the voice. At this moment, the bolt of lightning had already struck his body. Boom! The sound of the destruction of heaven and earth rang out continuously. The void of this small world produced endless cracks that looked like spider webs around Luo Fan's body. These cracks grew larger and larger, longer and wider. In the blink of an eye, the void within 100,000 feet around Luo Fan's body had been completely destroyed. The space had once again turned into incomparably small spatial fragments. After these spatial fragments and the shattered space, there was an incomparably brilliant golden light. This golden light contained infinite power and unfathomable mysteries. However, such a lightning attack that could completely destroy space and completely turn it into powder did not affect Luo Fan at all. As the endless lightning approached him, the dark green robe on Luo Fan's body flashed slightly, and a dark green light streaked across his body. All the power and destructive power of the lightning was easily dispersed and directly used in the space of this small world. What kind of treasure is this? It can even defend against the divine thunder of extermination. The strange life's voice rang out in the void with incomparable shock. The lightning finally completely disappeared as the voice rang out. And the endless spatial fragments that were produced from the shattered void also continuously transformed into five elements Yuan Qi that emitted connate aura in the process. Under the effect of the rules of space, the void was once again condensed into the void, allowing the small world to be complete again. When Luo Fan heard this voice, he smiled slightly and raised his head to look at the void. The golden and silver light in his eyes seemed to penetrate the barriers of infinite space, penetrate the barriers of infinite time and space, and saw the pair of eyes hidden behind the infinite time and space. He said, How can an extraterrestrial barbarian like you understand the mysteries of the untainted world? An extraterrestrial barbarian? Ha ha! A country bumpkin who single-handedly created the untainted world actually dares to call the venerable of the Julie great world an extraterrestrial barbarian? Ridiculous, ridiculous, huh? The voice in the void rumbled and reverberated continuously in the small world. It constantly poured into Luo Fan's ears through the connection of the void, and constantly flowed through Luo Fan's mind. Although the disdain in the voice was extremely obvious, Luo Fan's eyes lit up when he heard it. There was quite a lot of information revealed in the voice. An untainted world created by a single person in the Julie Great World? It seems that the primal chaos is more complicated than I thought. Such thoughts continuously flashed through Luo Fan's mind. However, his expression did not change at all. He only said indifferently, "The greatness of Pangu is not something you can imagine. If our untainted world is really just an untainted world, as you said, why do you hide in the barren sea outside the untainted world and do not dare to take even half a step closer to the untainted world?" Oomph. If it wasn't for the fact that I was too heavily injured and that Pango left behind 3 heavenly pillars in the untainted world to defend it, this small, untainted world would have long fallen into my hands. The voice paused for a moment before it said resentfully, "The 3 heavenly pillars must be Buzhou Mountain, the Fusong Tree, and the Supreme Sky Tree. I didn't expect that the 3 heavenly pillars actually have the ability to defend against creatures outside the untainted world." Luo Fan instantly obtained a lot of information from the voice. At the same time, he felt more at ease. The information revealed by the voice previously made him somewhat worried. Although the strength of this life form was nothing, and it would not take him too much effort to destroy it, the Julie Great World was behind this person, and he even dared to treat the untainted world as an untainted world. The strength of the Julie Great World was extremely terrifying, and he could not help but worry about the safety of the untainted world. Now that he heard that the 3 heavenly pillars could defend against creatures outside the untainted world, he naturally let go of his worries about the safety of the untainted world. Injured? It seems that the primal chaos is indeed not a paradise. There are also countless conflicts, Luo Fan said with a smile as he raised his head. As he said this, a trace of panic flashed across the eyes hidden in the depths of space and time, as if they had been reminded of something by Luo Fan's words. However, after the panic appeared in the eyes, it was immediately covered up by anger. Following that, a thunderous roar resounded in the air. "Even if I am injured, I can still easily destroy you. As long as I fuse with you, I will no longer fear the defense of the heavenly pillars left by Pangu, and I will be able to freely enter and exit the untainted world. At that time, all the resources in the untainted world will be at my disposal, and my injuries will recover as quickly as possible." The voice, which sounded like the roar of the heavens, reached Luo Fan's ears. Following this voice, the void was destroyed. Boundless destructive power erupted. High up in the sky, hundreds of thousands of meters above the sky, the golden light constantly pressed down with the momentum of a giant mountain crushing an ant. Under the pressure, the void was constantly shattered, and the endless power of the void constantly crushed towards Luo Fan. This power was thousands of times more powerful than the power of the lightning from before. The earth cracked, and endless violent yuan qi of the 5 elements emerged from everywhere in the void, destroying everything in the void, and all living creatures. The dark green light around Luo Fan's body constantly flickered, constantly expelling the infinite destructive power that was attacking him. The destructive power produced by the tyrannical 5 elements, yuan qi, and the destruction caused by the shattering of the void could only wreak havoc outside the dark green light, but could not affect it in the slightest. Luo Fan raised his head and looked at the sky. The golden and silver light in his eyes saw through the endless golden light above the void, and saw the 8 hands that covered the sky and the earth, constantly changing hand seals in the endless golden light. Chapter 387. Self-Heaven and Earth's Secret Art. Chapter 427. Self-Heaven and Earth's Secret Art. Luo Fan's figure was stable, and he floated in the void motionlessly. After the huge force generated by the collapse of the surrounding void approached the dark green light surrounding his body, it was like flowing water touching a reef, gently sliding to the side. It was simply unable to break through the barrier of the dark green light and touch Luo Fan's body. The more the golden light pressed down, the faster the hand seals changed, and more of the void collapsed. In the blink of an eye, the golden light had already arrived 100 meters above Luo Fan's head. Under the pressure of the golden light, the entire mini-kiliocosm had already turned into chaos, a chaos that was filled with golden light. The terrain of the continent, with a radius of several million feet, had already been completely destroyed, and the surrounding void had completely collapsed, turning into countless space fragments, bursting with waves of incomparably terrifying oppressive power, constantly rushing towards Luo Fan. This power had already reached the limit of the golden immortal realm. There was even an extremely mysterious and seemingly impossible to defend strange power that constantly disintegrated all defenses. Even if Luo Fan's main body came here, he would need to spend a lot of spiritual power to defend against this pressure. At this moment, Xuanji Boy could no longer hide in his main body. The dark green robe trembled slightly and turned into a beautiful woman. She appeared beside Luo Fan with a calm expression. Billions of dark green light rays radiated from her body, completely enveloping the area of 30 meters around Luo Fan like a light shield. This dark green light was like an indestructible brilliance. No matter how much the pressure increased, it could not make the light tremble slightly. Under the resistance of the light rays, although the golden light pressed down more and more, the two eyes hidden in the depths of the golden light gradually revealed a sense of panic and anxiety. The hand seals that were constantly changing in the depths of the golden light became more and more complicated, more and more mysterious, and the inconceivable power that was attracted by it surged crazily like a landslide or a tsunami. Luo Fan's true pupils of sun and moon passed through the barrier of infinite time and space, still looking at the pair of eyes hidden in the depths of the golden light. He said faintly, "It's only equivalent to the power of the golden immortal realm. Although the magical power of opening up the five elements world and then destroying it is quite mysterious, it can't break the defense of a primordial unity treasure. If this is all you can do, then don't blame me. Go to hell." The eyes hidden in the depths of the golden light revealed an indescribable sense of panic and anger. A strange roar then entered Luo Fan's ears. This loud roar contained boundless energy, and it even caused the entire world of the five elements that had collapsed into a state of golden chaos to surge violently. Countless phenomena were created, and they revealed an indescribably ferocious aura. "Break!" Luo Fan faintly smiled and spat out this word. As he said this, an indescribable change occurred spontaneously. An indescribable change occurred spontaneously. Suddenly, countless spiderweb-like cracks began to appear in the primal chaos, which was originally suffused with golden light from 30 feet away from Luo Fan. These cracks were extremely small at first, but as time passed, they continued to grow. After a few breaths, the golden light above had already pressed outside the scattered light released by Xuanji Boy. When it came into contact with the scattered light, the spiderweb-like cracks had already covered the entire five elements world within a radius of millions of feet. The spiderweb-like cracks had also increased to dozens of feet. Through the spiderweb-like cracks, one could see the scene of the untainted world outside. The boundless sea, the brilliance of the sun and the moon shining down from the sky, and the endless innate chi and water essence continuously seeping in. No! A loud roar came from the depths of the golden light. Then, the five elements world suddenly collapsed. It was smashed into countless tiny fragments by the spiderweb-like cracks, like shredded paper. Under the effect of the scattered light released by Xuanji Boy, it suddenly exploded. With this change, Luo Fan found that his body had returned to the untainted world and returned to the East Sea. Around him, countless specks of golden chaotic light floated in all directions. They were about to sink into the ocean below and disappear without a trace. With a thought, Luo Fan waved his left hand. He opened his sleeve, and an indescribably mysterious suction force suddenly appeared. This suction force covered the sky and earth. Under this suction force, the golden chaotic light that was originally flying like shredded paper quickly gathered towards his sleeve, forming a huge whirlpool. The whirlpool stirred at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, the golden chaotic light that was spreading wildly in all directions had been completely absorbed into the universe in his sleeve, condensing into a golden ball with a radius of 100 feet. It emitted golden chaotic light and floated in the universe. After this change, the void became clear again. It was no different from before the Five Elements world appeared. Oh, how dare you give away a stone for 2 lessons just to see the management fee? An incredulous roar suddenly came from the front and poured into Luo Fan's ears. Luo Fan easily absorbed it into his mind and instantly analyzed the thoughts contained in it. How could you destroy my self-world so easily? Self-world? It seems that you still have a lot of secrets hidden. But since you are from the outer area and you took the initiative to attack me, I don't need to be polite. Luo Fan looked up and said with a faint smile on his face. At this moment, tens of thousands of feet in front of him, the strange life that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall had undergone a huge change. Its body was still hundreds of feet tall, its 3 legs were still intact, and its 1 head and 2 faces were still very normal. However, the 8 arms had been completely cut off at the shoulder and disappeared without a trace. Where the 8 arms originally were, there was a smooth cut. From this cut, golden blood continuously seeped out and dripped down. When it fell on the surface of the sea, it was like magma entering the water, creating countless wisps of smoke. The seawater seemed to be boiling and began to churn continuously. At this moment, hearing Luo Fan's words, the fiendish face that was facing Luo Fan suddenly turned into a kind face. It said a lot of words expressing its thoughts. Misunderstanding, misunderstanding. I misunderstood your Excellency's intention. I didn't mean to attack. Luo Fan smiled and shook his head. With a thought, the Xuanji child, who was standing to the side, pounced onto his body and transformed back into a dark green robe. Then, without answering, he lifted his foot and strode through the air. In the blink of an eye, he crossed tens of thousands of feet and arrived beside the strange life. At this moment, Luo Fan was in the shape of a normal-born Taoism body, but he was less than 10 feet tall. Standing below the giant figure that was hundreds of feet tall, he seemed very small. But any life that saw this scene would not feel that Luo Fan was small. No matter what kind of life form he was in front of, no matter how big the difference in size was, as someone who had achieved Tai Fruit of Wei and could command the world, Luo Fan would not be the slightest bit inferior. He would not make others feel that the difference was too big or that he was very small. This did not require any kind of aura or support. This was the height of the essence of life. After arriving here, Luo Fan raised his hand and slapped towards the strange life form. As he slapped, in the void within a radius of 10,000 miles, there were suddenly countless strange lines that were as small as spider silk appearing out of thin air. These strange lines were colorless and transparent, thin and dense, faintly discernible. After they appeared, they moved with a bang and gathered in front of Luo Fan, gathering towards the strange life form in front of him. In the blink of an eye, before the strange life form had time to react, it had already gathered around the body of the strange life form, weaving countless complex and mysterious 3-dimensional talismans around the strange life form, forming a formation that was like a silk cocoon. In an instant, as the strange life form screamed, it shrank to the size of 3 inches, like a golden statue wrapped in a colorless and transparent crystal ball, floating in front of Luo Fan. Luo Fan reached out and grabbed it in his hand. The colorless and transparent crystal ball was the sealing formation formed by the countless colorless and transparent threads, and the statue was naturally the strange life form that had been sealed. The great ninely heavens and earth, this life form that calls itself the main body, must know a lot about the primal chaos. Its memories are a rare resource that can increase my understanding of the primal chaos. Luo Fan touched the crystal ball, a faint smile on his face. However, even so, at this moment, Luo Fan did not directly read the memories of this strange life form. Instead, he covered it with his left hand, and the crystal ball was placed into his universe in his sleeve. Right now, the Luo Fan above the EC was not Luo Fan's main body, but only a magic treasure. The universe in his sleeve, the true eyes of sun and moon, and other magic powers that it brought with it were only brought by Luo Fan's will, and were things that were added to this magic treasure by his will. Because of this, the universe in his sleeve and Luo Fan's main body's universe in his sleeve were connected through some mysterious method. When this magic treasure placed items into the universe in his sleeve, Luo Fan's main body could easily take them out no matter where he was. After the crystal ball entered the universe in his sleeve, Luo Fan, who was sitting cross-legged on a platform in the middle of the sea of lightning in the Wuji Palace, raised his eyebrows and slowly opened his eyes. When he opened his eyes, countless lights and shadows flashed past his eyes. The speed at which these lights and shadows changed was extremely fast, and they went through everything that the magic treasure had done and experienced. As the lights and shadows flashed by, Luo Fan already knew everything that had happened to the magic treasure over the past few days. The Julie world, the wild world, a world that was created by a single person. I didn't expect to encounter a life form of this level in the EC. Such thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. With a wave of his left hand, he used some mysterious and unfathomable method to pull out two items from the universe in his sleeve, and they floated in front of him. One of these two items was the 100-foot sphere condensed from the golden chaotic light after the collapse of the Five Elements world. The other was the fist-sized crystal ball that had sealed the life form of the Julie world. Luo Fan did not directly read the memories of that life form. Instead, he raised his hand and beckoned the 100-foot sphere in front of him. He pressed his hand on the sphere. At the same time, his eyes flashed with golden and silver light as he stared at the sphere. As he activated the true eyes of sun and moon, countless lights and shadows constantly changed in his eyes. The sphere in front of him began to rapidly disintegrate. From its original form, it disintegrated into countless chaotic golden rays of light, which then transformed into a small kiliacosm with a circumference of several million feet. This small kiliacosm then transformed into 5 mysterious rays of light of different colors. These rays of light then transformed into tiny specks of chaotic color, which then transformed into countless piles of strange materials that looked like a small mountain, and a spell that was incomparably complicated and strange, yet completely unfamiliar to Luo Fan. Only at this point did the lights and shadows completely collapse. So that's how it is. It wasn't created on the spot. Instead, it was refined using a certain spell after countless years and countless materials. Such thoughts flashed through Luo Fan's mind. While this thought flashed through his mind, that incomparably complicated and strange spell, which was written with weird characters, appeared in his mind without missing a single detail. After these strange characters appeared, Luo Fan made a slight movement with his mind and exploded. Then, under the effect of some magical law, they condensed back into a mysterious spell written with Pangu characters. My Heaven and Earth script. This was the name of this spell. This My Heaven and Earth script was completely different from the countless divine powers and magic arts that Luo Fan had learned from Pangu's soul, and it was not compatible with the scripture The Great Path that Luo Fan had learned from those divine powers and magic arts at all. This My Heaven and Earth script seemed to be completely different from the supreme Tao of the universe, the ultimate truth of the universe, and the rules of time and space. Every single character contained a secret that was completely different from that of the universe. It really is an outer domain cultivation method. Luo Fan looked at this cultivation method and instantly determined the origin of this cultivation method. There were countless cultivation techniques in the primordial world. Some of them were completely opposite, some were completely incompatible, some were completely compatible, and some were even different paths that led to the same goal. It seemed that there were all kinds of cultivation techniques, and all kinds of strange cultivation techniques could exist. However, in reality, the cultivation techniques of the primordial world, regardless of whether they were self-comprehended by living beings or inherited from Pangu's primordial spirit, basically followed some kind of deepest origin great Tao. No matter how different they were, they could find similarities after a certain level of understanding. However, the My Heaven and Earth script in front of him was different. In this My Heaven and Earth script, no matter how deep he went, no matter how he analyzed it, he could not find any similarities with the cultivation techniques of the primordial world. From this point, he could already confirm that this My Heaven and Earth script was definitely not a cultivation technique comprehended by the living beings of the primordial world. Luo Fan thought to himself, although this technique is from the outer world and can't be cultivated in the untainted world, it's unique and reveals another supreme great Tao. If I reflect it with the great Tao of the Tao fruit, it can allow me to have a deeper understanding of the great Tao of the Tao fruit. Although this My Heaven and Earth script was extremely complete, it clearly explained from the basics to the profound parts. It seemed that as long as he followed the cultivation path, he would definitely be able to cultivate it to perfection. However, with Luo Fan's Tai Tao fruit cultivation realm, he could clearly sense some kind of information from the darkness. That was, no living being in the primordial world would be able to successfully cultivate the self-heaven and earth technique. Even the strange life form that came from the outer realm was the same. The logic behind this was not difficult to understand. No matter what kind of cultivation technique it was, they all used the world, the supreme great Tao, and the truth of the universe to improve themselves. The difference between different cultivation techniques was only the ability to borrow the world, the supreme great Tao, and the truth of the universe. However, the essence was the same. To the cultivation techniques of the primordial world, no matter how crude or shallow the cultivation techniques were, under certain opportunities, they could be cultivated with the help of the world, the supreme great Tao, and the truth of the universe. However, this My Heaven and Earth script was different. Although this My Heaven and Earth script also borrowed the help of the world, the supreme great Tao, and the truth of the universe, it was not the world, the supreme great Tao, and the truth of the universe of the primordial world. Instead, it was the so-called Julie world. The source that it borrowed was naturally completely different. Naturally, it could not be cultivated in the primordial world. Luo Fan understood this. With a thought, a wave of lightning water rushed out from the sea of lightning below. It constantly twisted and changed in the void. In the end, it turned into an earth-yellow stone tablet that was 100 feet tall. It landed in front of Luo Fan. Light flowed on the stone tablet. There seemed to be endless power surging within it. It seemed that if one touched the stone tablet, they would be bombarded by the endless power and turn to dust. Seeing that it had already taken shape, Luo Fan raised his hand and pointed. The My Heaven and Earth script in his mind condensed into a speck of spiritual light. It rushed out of his finger and pounced forward, drilling into the stone tablet. After the spiritual light drilled into the stone tablet violently rolled. In the blink of an eye, large chunks of words appeared on the front of the stone tablet. These words were complicated and profound, but they were the My Heaven and Earth script. Luo Fan looked at the continuous appearance of the My Heaven and Earth script with a calm expression. He did not relax at all.